Thank you. Welcome to City Council. We will call the meeting to order. To start out, we will have an invocation from the Reverend Michael Eaton with the BC United Methodist Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
Let us pray. Beloved God, we give you thanks for the gift of this day that is behind us, for all the blessings that we've received, and now look forward in this evening to receive blessings as well. We ask now that your Spirit be among us, that our hearts and our minds would be at peace, that the words that are used this evening would be uplifting and affirming to all, and that you would guide the discussions and help us to do our best for our city. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Reverend Eaton. Hey, do we have any public announcements this evening? Thank you. We'll then go to public comment. The initial public comment period during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda for action. Each person has up to 5 minutes to speak on a specific agenda item. Is there anyone wishing to speak in public comment? Please state your name.
Yeah, Rob Martin. I'd like to talk about the old airport issue, but I think that would be the agenda item at the time, if you guys are allowing public comment on that, or should I do it now?
It's up to you.
I'd rather do it then, if that's okay. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
Hello, I'm Ken Green at 1713 Teakwood in Gingerwood. I'm speaking in reference to the Gingerwood expansion that's on Planning Commission. I think their number is 1713, and I think you have a different number here for the, the City Council to review. The important thing that I needed to say is that when this information was first published and put out, the public notice and so forth, and the information that was presented at the meeting, the Planning Commission meeting, was incorrect, and it has several flaws in it, including the ownership and so forth about it. I presented a letter to the board, and each one of you had in your mailbox at one time, excuse me, that covers all the situations that were basically appealing from the Planning Committee meeting. I presented a written document that covered the grievances and the problems that we had with the zoning, and that had gone into the Planning Commission and the city as a handwritten document, and it was not on the official form. So they turned around and I was in Mexico, and by the time I got this, I got back in a day late from the cutoff, maybe 2 days late for the cutoff on putting it onto the correct form. Since it wasn't on the correct form, the issues that need to be discussed and considered in the Gingerwood rezoning are going to not be heard. And what we have is information that was put out by the planning committee that was completely wrong or misunderstood. For example, they're putting in a number of houses as part of the expansion into Gingerwood. I think there's 6 units. And that property right now is zoned S, and they want to change it, the zoning. The reason that the council said it was zoned S is because they mistakenly thought it had to do with something with the grid layout of the geographics as they changed from a T to whatever it is now. The information that all the homeowners have is that the flood of the 100-year flood, when it came through Boulder, it wiped out a number of those houses on those lots, and they washed them over towards the golf course, what is the golf course now. That information is never considered. We don't know that the property is safe. There's nothing in the report from the planning service that deals with whether or not the property would now be safe. All we know is it was determined at one time it shouldn't be built on. Now we're saying we're going to build on it, and maybe that's the right answer. My point is the due process of making sure that we cover all the issues has not been looked into, including the wall to keep the fire out from brush fires. The Planning Commission gave them a variance, so we don't have to keep the fire out. So there's a number of things that I'm asking the committee to allow or return that document back to number 117, I think it's back to the Planning Commission to do it in a due process type of way. So that's my thing. I thank you for your time. It's great to see all the young ones in here now. The next officers of the city are starting off. So thank you.
I'm the manager at Gingerwood Mobile Home Park. There was never homes.
Please state your name.
Susan Davis.
Thank you.
There was never homes in that spot. It was storage. It washed away boats, little trailers, never homes. There's no water, sewer, or electric there, so it was never set up for homes. He's misinformed. I don't know why there's a problem with it. It's going to give 7 homes for seniors, affordable homes for seniors in Gingerwood. So it was always meant to be for homes, but it was never set up for homes. So I don't see why there's a problem with that. Susan did all the research, did all the planning. Everything was approved, and he's the only one who says it's not zoned. I don't get it. There's 270 affordable mobile homes there. We're asking to put 7 in. It's not a problem as far as I'm concerned. So that's what I have to say. He's misinformed. It was never homes. They never washed away. It's good property. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in public comment?
Good evening. You have to forgive me, this is my first time doing this. My name is Mike Caruso. Seems like there's a lot more pressing issues than what I'm here for. I'm here in regard to the Bill 1861 in regards to the RC track and the go-kart track. Fairly new to Boulder City. Love it here. It's amazing. Went to flight school here 15 years ago. Fell in love with the place. Anyway, once I had my own family, it was a huge goal to get here. One of the parts of doing that is all of the amenities that Boulder City brings for families. The RC track and the go-kart track is one of them that's dear to my heart, and certainly big for, I believe, my family, if my son's anything like me. The RC cars and go-karts allow an avenue that typically is taken up for normal conventional sports for most people. Motorheads and gearheads like us just don't fit in that way of thinking. So this type of activity kind of keeps us away from growing up doing kind of the bad things. So anyway, I just wanted to say I'd really appreciate your consideration to keep that thing going. And I thank you for you guys giving us the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
All right.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Young man? Please state your name.
My name is Owen Martin, and I am actually one of the quarter midget drivers for the RC track, and I just like to say it was a really fun sport for me, and I really liked going there, and all the other things that you could do there, like watching. Well, anyway, the funnest part is racing your car, which I'd like to say something about that. There are actually flat carts for adults too. And anyway, I really liked racing there, and I really hope you could get it running again. Just so me and all the other kids who race there could also. I think that will be it.
All right, thank you.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Martin, and I actually am going to read some notes because I tend to ramble on, so I thought it'd be a little bit better way to make my statement about the RC track as well. This topic is near and dear to me. Not only as a person that's lived here for 34 years, I graduated from BCHS in '91, and I'm now a business owner, but I'm also a mom, and I'm raising 2 little boys, and here they are, both race car drivers. My understanding with this track, amending the lease to make it human-driven, quote unquote, is that the first thing is a liability concern. Life has its risks. Walking down the sidewalk can be a risk, driving in a car. My senior year of high school, a friend of mine was riding her horse in an event. It was called team penning, and she had a freak accident, fell off just right, broke her neck, was in a coma, and actually later died right before graduation. I actually grew up riding horses. Luckily, had some stupid accidents, but luckily was never seriously hurt. I know years ago there was a boy here who fell off of his skateboard, and he was seriously injured. And he was a seasoned skateboarder. A couple years ago, both of these boys had broken elbows within 20 days of one another. One fell off a trampoline, and one fell off the playground in kindergarten at the school. So, life has its risks. This town's been labeled as an outdoor mecca. We have skydiving, we have zip lining, downhill bike riding, BMX, we have all the rec center sports. We just finished some soccer tonight, triathlons, horseback riding, off-roading, boating, and hopefully quarter midget racing will come back real soon. As a parent, I would never put my child in a situation where I wasn't confident about their safety. On Friday, an email was sent to invite all of you to come to the Boulder Dam Credit Union to see a quarter midget in person, to see all of the safety gear, and to look at the car, meet the driver of that particular car. Sadly, we didn't see any of you, and we really hope that you would come so that we could answer some questions and let you look at the car in person to see how safe it is. Is it fun to think that one or both of my sons could be the next Jeff Gordon, Joey Logano, or Bush Brothers? Sure. Is it probable? Probably not, but who knows? It's going to keep them out of trouble right now. But wouldn't it be cool if a kid from this town did grow up to be one of those iconic race car drivers someday? Another concern I heard is that the city would like to have a financial benefit from this track. Well, anyone who has done any sort of racing or even watched racing knows that there is no money in racing. We're in the red all the time. We're constantly buying tires, new safety gear. They outgrow the old stuff as fast as I can put them in it. So we also pay fees to the sanctioning body, which covers our insurance and our membership. There's not been a liability to the city with that because they do cover that. However, where there will be a financial gain is these people that come and visit, as well as the residents themselves. Trust me, we're on the go out there, so we're going to be visiting the restaurants, the gas stations to gas up, the grocery store, the coffee shops, because we need that caffeine. Let's make this a destination again for some other visitors. We just had thousands and thousands of people come visit for Art in the Park. Why not bring in a small group of racers to come watch this and support the sport? So I'm asking you to please amend that land lease, the land use permit. If some legal verbiage needs to be changed just to button up the liabilities and, of course, the financial aspect of it, let's work it out. We're not against that, but let's go ahead and do the right thing and let this sport continue on in our great city. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? All right, we'll go ahead and close the initial public comment period. We'll move on to the approval of the agendas. Approval of the regular agenda. Any changes, Madam City Clerk? No changes. Mr. City Manager?
No changes.
Mr. City Attorney?
No changes.
Thank you. Bring it back to council. Any changes?
No changes.
We'll entertain a motion then.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approval of the consent agenda.
Are you there, Mr. Harhay? Councilman?
Well, we'll go ahead with the approval of the consent agenda. Madam City Clerk?
Thank you, Mayor. Staff is requesting that we remove item number 1B, and that will appear on the October 22nd agenda, please.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager?
No additional changes.
Mr. City Attorney?
No further changes.
Council, any changes?
No changes.
Okay, I have a motion then to approve with changes.
I'll second.
All in favor? I'll make the motion.
I misheard. And I will second the motion.
All in favor then?
Aye. We got you, Councilman Harhay.
That will bring us then to item number 8 on the regular agenda, introduction of Bill 1862 to amend the zoning map for Gingerwood. We have a presentation. Okay. Council, any comments?
I will move to introduce Bill number 1862. Read the title, waive the reading.
Bill number 1862, an ordinance of the City of Boulder City, Nevada, to amend the zoning map to rezone approximately 0.48 acres within Gingerwood Mobile Home Park at 1300 Gingerwood Street from S Study to MP Mobile Home Park to match the remainder of the park, AM-19-342. Bill 1862 will be considered at the October 22nd regular meeting.
Thank you. Item number 9, introduction of Bill number 1863. Anyone wishing to make the introduction?
I move to introduce Bill number 1863, waive the reading, read the title only.
Bill number 1863, an ordinance of the City of Boulder City, Nevada, to amend the zoning map to rezone approximately 143.4 acres west of US 95 within the Boulder City town site from S Study to ER Energy Resource, AM-19-343. Bill 1863 will also be considered at the October 22nd regular meeting.
Thank you. Item number 10 then, presentation by Jaime Cruz, Executive Director of Workforce Connections, and Boulder City Library Director Kim Diem.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Jaime Cruz for the record, and Kim is here. Come on, Kim, join me. So I think there's a PowerPoint loaded up. We appreciate the opportunity to present in front of you. I'm always impressed by the high level of civic engagement of Boulder City, and so I commend you for that. So again, you know who we are now. Our agenda today is just to give you a brief overview of the role of Workforce Connections, an update on our current investment cycle, and what we're working on next. So again, I think like many of you know, Workforce Connections is Southern Nevada's local workforce development board. We serve the counties of Clark, Lincoln, Esmeralda, and Nye, including the major cities of Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, Henderson, and the best damn city in Nevada, Boulder City. So here is the system that we convene. Workforce Connections convenes 17 federally funded partners. This employment and training system adds up to about 140, 160 million, depending on the year and the economy. But Workforce Connections is directly responsible for administering 20 million of that. And again, those are the other partners. These partners right here manifest themselves in the services and the one-stop centers. These are some of the partners. Again, you can see state agencies and local agencies. Of course, you saw the libraries there as well. But why we're here today is to let you know that this particular year, we just in July 1st started new contracts for our investment cycle. And of course, Boulder City is part of that. Until a couple of years ago, we didn't have a presence here in Boulder City, but we're glad that we do now. A little bit later, you'll be hearing from Kim on the impact that the investment is making here in Boulder City. I'm sorry that you probably see on that photo, they're making me carry this everywhere, so I'm sorry if it's not, well, I'm supposed to carry it and show it to you here in a second. We've been all over the place talking about what was our strategic direction. Almost a year ago, we convened system stakeholders from the economic development system, the education system, and so forth, and they basically gave us a direction that weighed in the economy at the moment. As you know, we're in what economists call full virtual employment, so there's not a lot of as in years past, a lot of people willing and ready to go to work. We really have to tap into new strategies, and so our board and our local elected officials consortium, of which Boulder City is represented by Councilman Harhe. Before that, it was Councilwoman Levitt. That consortium group approved this direction months ago, and we incorporated that into the request for proposals process that took a few months and again was incorporated into contracts on July 1st. Here it is. We were directed to continue the transition. These are federal terms. I apologize for those acronyms, but this is basically continue to make sure that these services are available at one-stop centers like the one here in Boulder City. Make sure that all of the partners are participating, because again, you don't want just representation of that $20 million pot, but you want access to all $140, $160 million of those federal employment and training funds to make sure that people that want to enter a career or better their career have access to it. And here it is on the third spot. You see focus on alternate labor pools. So we really have a focus on the underemployed. We find out that a lot of families have one or two members of that family working one or two jobs. And so upskilling those people is a huge prerogative right now. We have also a lot of people still leaving the penal system, people who need a second chance, because if we're not successful after they leave the penal system, they'll just go right back. And so it's either, they stay as a tax burden where they can't support their families, and we as taxpayers are supporting them and their families, or they come out with training, get a job, and now they can support themselves and their families as well. And we have lots of good examples of that going on right now. Another group that we're trying to reach is disengaged youth. Don't ask me why I have two kids in this age. This generation is very different than when we grew up, but they're not engaged in the workforce right now, so we're working on that. And then, of course, our returning veterans. And this is really cool because individuals with disabilities haven't been able to compete as successfully in the marketplace before, but we have companies like Sephora in North Las Vegas. I'm not sure here, but Sephora in North Las Vegas has committed to work with us to make sure 30%, that's 30% of their workforce comes with a population from individuals with disabilities. So again, this is the reality of our labor market today. And we have to, again, continue to focus on, for a decade, you've heard about the diversification of Nevada's economy, going from an economy that was merely based on hospitality and mining to now one where we have manufacturing, high tech, healthcare, professional sports, NFL stadiums, all these things. So lastly, but not least important, we were tasked to seek the highest return on investment for the public funds, because these are funds, taxpayer dollars, our dollars. And so we are tasked to making sure that the investment really has a high return, that these taxpayer dollars are maximized in their impact. And to do that, of course, we use performance data to measure that return on investment. So again, I'm running through it. If you would like more of the data, we can for sure provide that for the council at a later date. But here's our procurement process. It's required every 4 years, what we just went through. We went through a robust outreach campaign for these RFPs. Then there's a long evaluation process. And again, July 1st, we awarded those contracts. So where we are now is that we have more system partners engaged. As I said earlier, those 17 partners that make up the big pot. There's more integration, more collaboration, but more importantly, more access points to the service. As you know now, Boulder City is part of this map. Down here, another great example of we weren't before, what are Mesquite and Laughlin, locations that we weren't able to cover before, because there's a cost to renting space. But the beauty of the relationship with Boulder City and these other places is we have the public libraries. And so without any additional cost, we were able to bring the subject matter experts, the staff that our funds cover, place them in your library and make sure that the community here in Boulder City has access to these taxpayer programs. So again, today we have staff from that center here who is available for questions if you would like. Finally, there's the map that they make me carry around. I also heard from the staff today that Boulder City has a great partnership with the Sunrise Rotary Club, and that you guys conduct mock interviews every other month, and these have been very successful in helping people obtain employment, so thank you for that. Again, our staff here from the center can ask more detailed questions about that. But you can see, I found out from them also today that the library in its first, or the One Stop in its first year saw over 600 people access the services, and in the short time of this program year, already over 200. So definitely it's been successful in reaching Boulder City citizens. There's other things, as you see there, we've been able to bring also resources like 3D printers so that Kim and her staff can help the interest, again, of this new generation and these technologies that weren't there when we were young. And so, Kim, I'll let you maybe share your thoughts from your perspective on what this partnership has been.
All right, thank you, Jaime. Initially, I was very excited about this program when Jaime called me up to tell me about it. And I was, for several reasons, I was excited about it, but the main one was that I started my library career through a similar program, and after I got out of the military and finished school. So after hearing about this partnership, I knew that this partnership between the workforce connections and the libraries had a lot of potential to help others reach their goals, their career goals. Since our partnership began, we've had the benefit of working alongside some fantastic career advisors who specialize in determining the right career fit. And they help build an appropriate resume with people, and they also help the interview process. As Jaime mentioned, those have been going very well. Having the One Stop located in our library is very beneficial, as we don't have to direct anyone to any organization over the hill, Henderson, Las Vegas. We're able to offer and meet their specific needs right inside our building. And with all the services that the One Stop can offer, their goals fit into the library's mission to strengthen our community through access to information. So having those experts in career advising in our building strengthens the value of the library's overall service that we offer. Boulder City Library's career coach is Gina. She's here tonight. Gina. She's been a great addition to our library family, and she's already made a huge impact by teaming up with the Sunrise Rotary. And I heard the other day with another Rotary group to offer resume writing classes. So we're real excited about that. Knowing that the One Stop has this extensive reach into the community and the local job market, and with the quick availability of all the resources, we just firmly believe it's an amazing, amazing benefit for the citizens of Boulder City. Okay.
Thank you, Kim. Don't go away. Stay with me. We're almost done. To share with you again that some of the impact we're making, and by the way, we made this presentation at Clark County and City of Las Vegas and so forth. So and when we commit to you that we want to stay disconnected, and we'll come back every year as often as you want us to give you these updates. But we're also working with the Clark County School District on something we call the Apprenticeship Pipeline Initiative. And what that is, as you know, right now, the data shows that roughly 30% of Nevada's graduates are choosing the four-year college career pathway. And so where's the other 70% going? And so we are working with CCSD to make sure that more of our young people are exposed to what we used to when we were young. So things that you can use your hands, and sometimes that's shop, sometimes that's the art, sometimes that's, music, whatever. And so in other countries, they have apprenticeships in more than just construction. There's apprenticeships in finance, apprenticeships in, believe it or not, cheese making or watchmaking. And so working really hard with CCSD to make sure that there's more apprenticeships available as we move forward. This was a really cool project. You see the superintendent there and Commissioner Kirkpatrick, because on TV a lot of times you see colleges have what they call signing day, and kids wear their jerseys, and there's these fancy ceremonies. So these are all young people who entered an apprenticeship, signed a contract with to be able to earn as they learn. So there was an employer there that brought their hats, and they were able to share that they were entering this 4-year commitment that didn't have a debt associated to it, and they were going to earn money as they learned their career. So that was a really good event. Another thing happening, which Boulder City is a part of as a county, Clark County, just a couple of months ago, we became the largest county in the nation to be certified as a work-ready community. And some of that work, again, happened through the Boulder City Library. But at the end of the day, this is the most important part. Who do we serve? We brought with you, there's tons of people that we could bring, don't have enough time, but we brought somebody that the staff here recommended. His name is Scott Kessler. He's here with us, and he's going to share with you his story through the One Stop.
Good evening, Scott Kessler, Boulder City resident, 17 years. I'm so glad that something like the One Stop Career Center is here in Boulder City. After many years of being a manager in restaurants and retail, there came a point in my life where that kind of money just wasn't cutting it anymore for my family. I was on a downhill spiral, getting burned out on the career, going from establishment to establishment, and it just wasn't getting the hours that I could have been, getting the pay that I could have been, and it was affecting everything else in my life. But then I found the One Stop Career Center. I had heard that they had job board listings in there, so I was in there checking those out, and started talking to Gina and finding out what other kind of opportunities they had there. But I was pretty frustrated at the time, upset at the world, and wasn't exactly as kind as I could have been to them. But they were always very courteous and professional, and I continued coming back, and eventually they were able to introduce me to some guys from the National Technical Institute. It's a HVA school out in Las Vegas. They were even able to help me find funding for the school, and I made sure I got there every day. I mean, that was the least I could do. I got some additional certifications, found a whole new career track, and have been really able to turn my life around just because of the Career Center here at the Boulder City Library.
Awesome. I think that's thank you, Scott. Thank you, Scott. And I think, so that brings us to our conclusion. We wanted to leave you wanting more. So thank you to the mayor, members of the council, city staff, and Boulder City for letting us come to your city. We plan to stay as long as you want us. So thank you for having us.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council?
Yeah, I'll just make one quick comment and then I have one question. First of all, thank you so much for being here. I think it is absolutely wonderful what you guys do for the community. I've actually talked to Scott before about his experience with there, and he certainly is a great case for what great things Workforce Connections can do. You mentioned earlier that the importance of those who've just come out of the penal system needing to get jobs to help kind of get on track. But a lot of times there's a lot of roadblocks they could put in their way, not just the stigma of hiring somebody, but also state laws on who can hold licenses and stuff like that. How do you overcome some of those obstacles, and where are you finding the best opportunity in that field?
Thank you, Councilman, for that question. You hit it right in the head. That population faces severe barriers that we cannot imagine. And so again, but there's a business imperative to move them again from tax burden to tax base. For all of us, it's a business imperative beyond the social imperative as well. I'm proud to say that here in Southern Nevada, we have an example that is receiving national attention. They have been invited by the Speaker of the House in D.C., by the current administration several times to the White House, because several governors are trying to copy it. There's this thing called recidivism rate that they use in this world. And if you can hit 50, you're doing okay. You can keep your funding. If half of the people you put through a program don't reoffend, you can keep your funding. And that, we have a program here in Las Vegas who's hitting 94% success. Wow. And so if you want to know more, it's called Hope for Prisoners. Again, we fund that. It's based out of Las Vegas, but can serve populations from any of our area. So would be glad to give you more information about that, and even invite you. They have these amazing graduations where you get to see not only the people that are starting the program. It's about an 18-month program, but you also get to see the people 2, 3, 4 years out. And the amazing part is that when they come back with the employer who actually hired them, and the employers say, this is the best employee I have had. And so who's graduating, who wants to come, it's really amazing. So if you're interested, we'd be glad to connect you and invite you to that program.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I have a comment.
Councilwoman Folda?
I just want to say I frequent the library often, and every time I go there, there's someone in that area looking at the job post or talking, I think with Gina probably, and I just think that it's very tongue-tied. It's very beneficial to Boulder City, and to that people can come locally and look for jobs, and they don't have to travel far to find that information. And I just hope that maybe our local businesses, when they're looking for employment, can reach out to you, and that we can partnership better. And I think that's part of our community is, with the Rotary helping out, and I think that's what makes Boulder City great. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more. I think we have seen Boulder City as a special place. We're so grateful to Kim and her staff that have been tremendous to us. I want to leave you with one thought that I had when I first came to, if you will, pitch this idea to you and to your board. We brought some of the promises of a 3D printer and things that we could bring, but you guys took me to a place under the library. I guess what is that the basement? The basement. Anyway, my mind started flowing because I know that we've gone through, we're through the recession, but I know that there was plans for that at one time. I guess what I want to drop with you, a seedling, is if you ever envision that space activating into something that aligns with what we share with you today, consider us in on that idea. We would love to mobilize more resources, do something with you.
A couple of things. First of all, I say congratulations on your program. I've volunteered over the years at Emergency Aid of Boulder City, and it's been really nice to help people find something other than a day job or something that they're just going to do for a little bit before they get bored, and to actually have somewhere to go where they might be able to get some training, some assistance. Not a question, now does your program the one where you help employers that pay the person for the first, I don't know how many days, weeks that they're employed, give assistance to them so they'll take the chance, so they'll go with the people that go through your program?
Yes, Councilwoman, I'm so glad to hear that you know that much about us, because yes, that's a secret to our, a well-kept secret to our programs, because employers can take a kind of a test drive that doesn't really hit their bottom line. So if we have a graduate who we put through HVAC school, let's say, and there's a HVAC company that perhaps is trying to hire somebody new, as you said, for a period of time, we can cover a portion of that salary, and it depends on many things, but yes, so we can help minimize the impact of recruiting for local employers, yes.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would just like to say, I think it's fantastic, the work that you all do there. It doesn't surprise me that Kim and the library staff down there, I know that they accommodate many things at that library. And you're right, someday the basement may actually get done, I hope. But a couple of things that I picked up in your presentation that I wanted to kind of emphasize for the community, things like resume writing and the mock interviews. I think that's really important for young people. I look back on when I was first starting out, that's got to be the most nerve-wracking part of trying to find a job, is going and talking to the prospective employer and having these types of training, getting those skills that maybe you don't think are important, but in talking with your counselors, getting that onto a resume so that prospective employers can recognize those skills, but then giving a person a little bit of comfort on what it's going to be like when they do sit down for that interview. I think that's invaluable experience for people. The apprenticeship program, I serve on a couple of different boards at the county level. I hear it frequently that the unions are looking for apprentice to go into their programs. Again, I know people that did that right out of high school, did very well in their lives by getting into those types of programs. So four-year college is great, but there are plenty of other opportunities out there, and I'm glad that you do have an emphasis on that. Again, thanks very much for the work. As the other council members have said, let's hope our local employers know where you're at, and certainly anyone who's looking to either change a career or start a career, that's the place to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we will move then to bill number 1861, item 11, the quarter scale racing.
Thank you, Mayor. Brock Armentrout, your contracts and real estate manager. This is an item that the City Council has been considering for several months. Most recently at the bill introduction at our last council meeting. Prior to the introduction, you received some additional information from the interested parties. During that discussion, you made many comments about what you would like to see in the agreement should you want to look on it favorably, so we attempted to address those concerns and suggestions in the agreement. And then since the packet went out, it was tweaked even more to make sure we had fully addressed your concerns. So on the dais, I placed before you there's both an unhighlighted copy and a highlighted copy to help you better see what was changed from the original introduction from 2 weeks ago. Primarily, the changes circle around Section 1, Paragraph C. It clarifies the permitted activities and the unpermitted activities. We wanted to make it clear that drones or anything in the air is not permitted. As you know, that this facility is very close to the approach end of our main runway at the airport. Drones versus Cessnas do not end well for either party. Not to mention it's against federal law. So we want to make it clear that no drones. And then it also, as far as permitted uses, it lists the midget racing or human-occupied racing as well as the RC cars. Section 4 has been modified to clarify that any monies received have to stay with the property or stay with the nonprofit for the maintenance and operations of the facility, and that the fees charged can exceed those necessary to operate the facility, meaning no one's going to get rich. The monies received have to go back into the facility to keep it operating in good condition. Section 8 has been clarified that the track has to be certified as safe by the certifying insurance company or the insuring entity that's insuring the race and facility. And that certification has to be provided to the city. If the city is still not satisfied about their certification, the city can require additional safety certification to make sure that our participants are going to be safe. Then Section 21 has been clarified to make it clear that no subletting is permitted on the property. Just makes it pretty clear. Before, under the original lease and the modified one we had last 2 weeks ago, did allow for subletting to other entities. This clarifies that there is no subletting. If there are specific questions about the proposed amendments to the amendment, either I or the city attorney can answer those. Otherwise, we're prepared to answer any questions or let you deliberate.
Any questions?
A couple of them. First of all, I want to say thank you for all of the work that you all put into this to hopefully get us to a point where we can finally take this to rest. It just occurred to me when you said not subletting that there can be other users. We have the main lessee. We are the lessor. We have a main lessee, and that these other groups that wish to use the property would not be sublessees. They would simply be other entities that wish to use the property. Is that
That's correct.
a correct understanding?
That is.
With the cooperation and coordination of the lessor.
With the coordination of the lessor. Also, that I know that what we've been doing lately is looking at this compared to the Pistol and Rifle Club.
That's correct, Councilwoman. After our last meeting, when this came up, there were some questions as to whether or not the city has any other lease agreements with nonprofits, and we do. And so that happens to be one of them, our lease agreement with the Boulder City Rifle and Pistol Club. And in reviewing that agreement, they too have the opportunity to allow other groups to use that facility. And it's not a sublease per se. While there is a provision in there for subleasing, it can't happen without the approval of the city council, correct? So the terminology here would be that other entities or groups can use that facility through the special use permit process. And so that's administered by the Parks and Recs Department, as has been done in the past. But it delineates and qualifies what those specific uses are. Okay. And the restrictions that would apply.
Now, they do not have a delineation between whether the other users are for-profit or non-profit.
So the amended agreement as drafted currently would require them to be non-profit.
In the case of the Pistol and Rifle, or in the case...
Does not. Pistol and Rifle does not require them to be non-profit.
But the money that, whatever they receive would go back into the club for...
In the agreement that's before you tonight, that's correct.
That's correct.
Is that the current lessee right now, under this agreement, would have the ability to charge an entrance fee, but only so much to keep the facility operational. And so for the continued operation and maintenance of the facility, they could charge a fee, but it can be used for nothing beyond the operation and maintenance of that facility. And so the original agreement that came before the council considered a 50-50 split, right? And so after the concerns that we had heard at that meeting regarding the possible entities that would be using it and the difficulties in administering such a contract, and then looking at some of our other contracts that we have with nonprofits, this is where this revision came. That it would make it easier to administer, so that we don't, and we do have a right, mind you, within this amended agreement to take a look at the books, right? And to audit those books to ensure that those fees are going back into the facility.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Mayor, I have some comments.
Go ahead.
Okay, so looking at the original lease that we looked at and introduced our last council meeting, I felt like I went through the entire agreement line for line, word for word, and I felt like, well, there was some language in there that was missing. So I said, this is important enough to me that I sat with the city attorney for probably, an hour and a half and went through this lease agreement and made him take a bunch of notes of changes. So some of these things are in there that were changed. I think he changed most of the issues that I had, and then added some language from Mr. Armentrout. So I feel like this is a lot better agreement than we had before our last city council meeting, and I think it works out a lot of the issues that we were wondering about of what's the checks and balances once this gets turned over, and who's checking up on making sure that these are safe for everyone, and that that there is an entity that's going to be looking at each event calendar and making sure that they have the insurance, and then making sure that they have the EMS that's required for safety issues, and then we covered the drone issue as well. And I think that this is a lot better agreement than we had before now, and I think that that this would be very beneficial to Boulder City and to the kids that are using it, and like public comment was given earlier today, I think that we have a lot of high risk adventure things in Boulder City, and I think this is probably one of the safest ones that we have with all the safety equipment and measures that they have to do to participate. And so that's just kind of my comments where I stand. Thanks.
I will echo Councilwoman Folda's sentiments. It's funny that you said that you had sat down with the attorney and made a lot of these changes, because this was more or less exactly what I was hoping to see as well. And I was thinking, did they just pick that up off of the subtle one or two sentences I said? But I think it is really good. I think this is probably, since I've been elected to council, the issue that I had received the most public comment from people, not just in email, but walking around at Art in the Park or Worst Fest or anything. Everybody, this was very important to a lot of members of our community. And so I think this is a good way to move forward that allows a little bit more control of the situation to make sure that things are on the up and up. And I believe that the current leaseholders, I think, have maintained the property very well. I think they've done a great job, so I think this is a good way to move forward with them as well. I really don't have any other comments about it.
I have a couple of comments. One, first, in general, I know that I too have heard from a number of folks about this, and some of that has been, the council wants to be the bad guys and make kids unhappy. That's not it. The way this evolved, the way this came to council, was not in a good way. Okay, we had some competing groups apparently that were taking over the facility or taking over the business. I heard reports of locks being changed and people being denied access to this facility. This started out as some hobbyists going out on some land that the city provided the use for at no cost. Again, we all love our stuff here in Boulder City, and the city had said, here's some land. Don't run your RC cars on the streets. Go ahead and take them out there and enjoy that. Then over time it evolves into, we'll build a track. Okay, that's nice. And then we'll start putting kids in cars and having them race. Well, that was never communicated to the city. Okay, that leaves a big exposure for Boulder City when we're not aware of these types of changes that occur. So what has happened, and by the way, the city attorney, Mr. Armentrout, All of the council members have put hours into this project. The comment was made earlier that the council members were invited and didn't show up to the credit union. Well, I know myself and Mr. Adams met with the leasee. I have spoken with other people that have been interested in this. We put hours into trying to get this worked out, and I do think that the lease agreement that has been arrived at now does that in a much better fashion. It establishes the original intent of that property, which was it was for nonprofit use. The use of the property was provided at no expense by the city of Boulder City. And the intent was we don't want to see people try and turn it into a business for their own profit. We do want it for the enjoyment of our residents as well as residents from Henderson and Las Vegas to come out here and have an enjoyable time. So I guess some of this is due to some of these comments that I've heard. Folks, we've been working really hard to get this worked out for you all, because what usually happens in situations like this is we hear it's for the children. Well, it wasn't the children that were making this a problem. It was the adults, and that's usually what happens, unfortunately. So I think we've got the adults squared away now. I do have one concern about it. It was mentioned earlier that other uses at the track would be subject to council approval. I don't really see that in section 1D. I would like to propose an amendment to section 1D that at least for the next 2 years, this will come to council before 120 days prior to the lease anniversary date. And that will include a report on the status of the nonprofit, an income and expense statement from the nonprofit, a schedule of events held over the previous 12 months, and proof of insurance. And those are all adult concerns. The kids can have a great time. I certainly hope that the leasee is going to work with the other groups that want to be able to use that track to be able to do so. But I think at least for the next 2 years, the city council needs to hear about this so we make sure that we don't get off track like we did before and have to expend so much time on trying to unravel everything that was happening out there. But other than that, I think the lease is in good shape. Any other questions or comments? All right, I would move for approval then of Bill 1861 with the proposed amendment.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, thank you. And kids, go have a good time. Okay, we'll move to item 12 then.
Are you there, Councilman Harhe? We've got you on.
Mr. Mays, this will be a presentation on the request for information that was put out for uses, proposed uses of what we affectionately call the old airport.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. Michael Mays, your Community Development Director.
Are you there, Councilman Harhe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. The former 8,000 square foot airport hangar located at 1401 Boulder City Parkway was built in 1940 and served as the city's airport until 1990. The lease on the hangar had expired in December of 2018. At that time, the city was receiving several inquiries regarding interest in both the hangar and the adjacent property. In order to solicit ideas and provide for a public and transparent process for the city's evaluation of potential tenants for the hangar and the adjacent land, a request for information, or RFI, was sent out in March. The RFI sought projects that would accomplish the following: bring new visitors to the city, preserve and promote the historical nature of the hangar and the airport. Be innovative in quality and design. The RFI process is preliminary. If the City Council decides to proceed, a more formal request for proposals, or RFP, would be issued for the type of project that the council is interested in pursuing. Depending on what those uses may be, other city reviews and approvals may be required. The city is zoned C2, general commercial. The city's master plan contemplates a mix of medium to low density residential, medical, and commercial office uses. In the past, through the land management process, several potential uses were identified for the hangar and adjacent airport, including residential, outdoor recreation, and a multi-use sports complex. In response to the RFI, the city received 3 proposals. They are the Dandy Horse Ranch proposal, Litchin's proposal, and the Bullock Field Coalition proposal. Since that time, the Bullock Field Coalition has withdrawn their proposal for consideration from the council. In your packet, you have additional information, including the original RFI, as well as the minutes from the Historic Preservation Committee's meeting on August 28th, when they heard presentations from the proposals and provided feedback. Tonight, the Dandy Horse Ranch and Litchins are here to give their presentations to the City Council and answer questions.
Do they want to begin their presentations then?
Yeah. And if we can start with the Dandy Horse Ranch as the first one.
Thank you.
Evening. I believe I've got somebody going to join me here. Excellent. Awesome. Super excited to be here. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, council members, staff. My name is Chris Gagne. I am a Clark County resident, but my kids are 4th generation, and their great-grandfather worked on the dam. Super excited to be here. My team can exist with Grant Turner here, who we all know well, local, born and bred. I also have Rob Piccoli in the back with us too. Rob and I have done some successful work in downtown Las Vegas, and he obviously has a long development history here in the Valley. I am here to talk to you about the Dandy Horse Ranch. Obviously, you guys are familiar with Bullock Field, and I think this is a really auspicious day to be talking about an old airport. It's Eddie Rickenbacher's birthday today. He actually competed against Noel Bullock in the Pikes Peak race in 1922. So it's kind of cool. Dandy Horse Ranch. Where's the clicker? Bear with me. So what we're going to talk about today is basically phase 1 of a altogether ambitious proposal. But phase 1 really speaks specifically to the RFI in terms of what it was required with the hangar itself and the immediate 18 to 22 acres that are there. The first image that you see here is our concept for an event space using the old hangar itself. We intend to convert the airport hangar into an event venue, as well as develop the surrounding land to be utilized as a combination motor coach resort and modern mobile housing. This is the event venue. Improvements to the airport hangar would include 4,500 square foot mezzanine, food beverage establishment, new lighting, HVAC, stage and audio visual system, as well as a commissary kitchen. The end product would be an 8,000 square foot event space with a strong emphasis on design, aesthetics, and functionality with a nod to the hangar's aviation history. Event space of this size and scope, which does not currently exist in Boulder City, would provide the potential for a virtually limitless variety of events and considerable revenue to aid Boulder City's overall economic vitality. We obviously want to honor what's there as much as possible, and this is something that you're going to see us trying to rinse and repeat as much as possible in this project. We're not trying to bring anything new per se. It's more about invigorating what's already there. So this is the hangar. What we're showing in this rendering is some of the possible activity that you could see on a busy day, on a busy event day. When we went in front of Historic Preservation, I showed some precedents from Austin, Texas, Denver, and Berlin, Germany, where they have resuscitated old airports and hangars specifically in different ways. So this was kind of harking back to that. I just want to point out the tri-motor, the Ford tri-motor there in the front too. If we can get our hands on one of those, that would be great. That's exactly what was flown originally out of the airport with the Grand Canyon Airlines. Moving on to the general plan for the site. We're looking at some hospitality. I think that with the amount of energy and visitorship that you're going to get with this new event space, it'd be great to take advantage of that with some hospitality element as well. So everything that you're going to see here that we're proposing is pretty light touch development-wise. It's not hard on infrastructure. It's trying to use existing systems or existing units that are already kind of out there. In other words, the lightest touch to the existing site as possible. So the hospitality would be based on 8 acres and roughly have 75 lots for a modern motor coach resort is what we're describing. It's basically a new concept with timeless designs. So once again, showing the Airstream is a perfect example. It's very contemporary. There's lots of different versions of hospitality use. At the same time, that's a 1955 design and it's timeless. Flexible accommodations for groups or individuals. Once again, we're talking about a very light touch here, so it could be flexible accommodations. New destination for new visitors. So a reinvention of the Boulder City airport itself and getting people to actually activate with it and have experiences out there, which I think will be really, really tactful and benefit the rest of the community. We're proposing a housing element too, equally sized. The idea here is that there's some basically modern mobile version of this, so it'd be about efficient space, energy, and technology. The mobility, this is something that is, I think it's in the spirit of the site to begin with, as its nature as an old airfield. It's always been about mobility, so I want to maintain that as much as possible. So I think the modern version of that is wireless mobility, wireless freedom, and a full range of transportation options, both private and public. In terms of the living itself, something that's sustainable, diverse, and attainable housing. The average housing price in the valley is now over $300,000 starting. That's your average price for a home, and that's daunting to most young or senior individuals. This is the fun part. Boulder City has this amazing tradition of cyclery. There's a direct connect between aviation history and cyclery. Once again, going back to this idea of mobility on the site, it would be really great to further emphasize what Boulder City does really well in terms of all its outdoor activities and specifically cycling. So in our proposal, we're looking at a couple different options for what we could do in terms of a bike-centric neighborhood and infrastructure. So we're showing a potential velodrome, but more importantly, it's modern. Bicycle and health-focused community. Flexible, the mobility, it gives it flexible infrastructure to accommodate many uses. In other words, you're not going to get set with one track for one kind of use. If we do this right, one day it could be parking, and the next day it could be a bike track, the next day it could be absolutely nothing, and it's back to being a pristine open space. Also, you guys have world-class competition here, and it would be really great to further emphasize that and have Boulder City take a leadership role in not only North America, but beyond. And then, most importantly, that you have world-class competition all the way down to family recreation. This is where I would be fitting in. This is exactly what I do with my family, and I would love to be able to, it's something I already do down here, but to further develop that experience and to be able to connect into Bootleg Canyon and into the town. And I really see this site as the opportunity to make a crux for that kind of experience. That's the dandy horse, so thank you very much. I was gonna go back to the hangar slide, because I'm sure that's what we want to talk about the most.
Hi, everyone. Grant Turner, 30-something year resident of Boulder City. Of the three components, I'm most excited to talk about the hangar. Something about old buildings. I think maybe I got it from my dad. But before we talk about the hangar, I would like to just touch broadly on kind of where Boulder City is right now. We are a very vocal, no growth or very limited growth community. So how do we thrive economically with just over 15,000 residents? And I think this last weekend was a pretty good example. Just events. We've got the dam, we've got Bootleg Canyon, we've got skydiving, we've got golf. But really, events we are an event destination. That's sort of what we've been. That's what we're known for. Spring Jam, Worst Fest, Short Dam Film Festival, the Doodlebug. Any downtown business owner will tell you that anytime there's an event in Boulder City, the town comes to life. This last weekend was a prime example of it. And by the way, I've got some stats to back that up. Some of these surprised me, by the way. Hotels, on what we're doing, we're comparing a standard weekend to an event weekend. Just under 20% increase on event weekends for hotels. Using my data from the Dillinger, this is what really surprised me. We are over 40% increase from non-event weekends to event weekends, which is just tremendous. In the course of a normal week or a normal year, there are points in the summer maybe where all we are doing is surviving, just barely, and it's tough to keep the doors open, but we do because we look forward to the nicer weather, but we look forward to those events. My staff gets fat, I get fat, the antique stores get fat. I'm hoping some of I don't have any numbers yet from antique stores or from retail side or gas station, but I'm working on that. I guarantee they're up. If they're down, they're doing something wrong. Bottom line is events drive an economic vitality in Boulder City, plain and simple. So back to the RFI. We were asked to identify an adaptive reuse for the airport hangar with these three main components. Celebrate the historic significance of the site and the building, which that's going to be a lot of fun because I've never had an opportunity to play with any kind of an aviation theme, and I've got some tremendous ideas. The second, attract new visitors to Boulder City. That would be its core competency. We're talking about an event venue, the size and scope that just does not exist in Boulder City currently. The third was innovative design and construction, which that's our wheelhouse. That is what has paid my bills for the last 10 years. That's what my father has been doing for his entire career. So that's what we are excited about. As far as the space itself, what I see is you've got the 8,000 square foot hangar. From the outside, that doesn't change a bit. Maybe you freshen up the paint. Maybe you put in new glass instead of what's there, which is, it looks like fiberglass. But On the inside, you do all new lighting and sound, HVAC. The thing will be set up for any type of event. It'll be very flexible. As you enter the space on the right-hand side would be a 2-story mezzanine, entirely open with views to the stage, food and beverage establishment. The main challenge with events currently, if you're setting up for Art in the Park, if you're setting up for Worst Fest or the Dillinger Block Party, no matter what it is, the upfront cost, you're bringing in, you build the stage, you bring in generators, you bring in porta potties, and these are all barriers to entry to have more events. We still do it, even though there's a tremendous amount of work. But if those facilities are there, it enables much easier use for events and a larger variety. Wrote down some of what we could be doing. This is, and I'm sure we're going to be getting ideas from the crowd and ideas from the city. But just off the jump, music festivals, which we already hold in Boulder City, and they are successful. But they're also, most of them outdoor and contingent upon the weather. If ever anything happens during Spring Jam or Dillinger Block Party, it would be great to have a fallback position and maybe be able to mobilize. Farmers markets, that is, I think that would be a great space for a farmers market. Maybe it's once a month, maybe it's every Sunday, whatever it is. Car shows, dance recitals, you start expanding into things like a TED Talk or political events. Maybe that's where graduation is held. It could be a wedding venue. Weddings, we're in the wedding business, and it is it's great for the city. The hotels fill up, and really, it's like every other event. If no matter what, when you have eyeballs, you've got a better opportunity to get healthy. In summary, we as a group, we feel very strongly about this proposal. I would like the council to look at these. I would like the council to look at the 3 elements a la carte. In other words, if we're looking forward to working with the city to design the RFP. We feel strongly that this is the highest and best use. We feel strongly that that building deserves to have life and deserves to be repurposed. So we're excited about the prospect of working with the city and designing the highest and best use for not only the airport hangar, but for the site as a whole. One more thing. Right now, I've been waiting for this time in Boulder City for a very long time. As you drive in now, the stretch from Railroad Pass to the first stoplight has been depressing for a very long time. And I love a good creosote bush, but I think it's time. I like what the city's doing there. I really like the landscaping they're putting in, the beautification from stoplight to stoplight, bike paths. It's a perfect parallel. It's the perfect time to tie in connecting Bullock Field with Bootleg Canyon and downtown Boulder City and create that mobility. Maybe even help solve our parking problems in downtown Boulder City. Encourage a park and ride. Park at Bullock Field and ride your bike into downtown Boulder City and explore it. The timing is right. The plywood's coming off of buildings. We've got new interest coming in with the Boulder City store. I think this is the perfect time to ride this momentum and repurpose the airport hangar and Bullock Field. We welcome any questions.
Council, any questions?
Yeah, just at this time, I'd like to disclose that I do have a personal and professional relationship with Mr. Turner. He's also the employer of my fiancée, Svetlana Stefanova, and for that reason, I will be abstaining from any deliberation and voting.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I had some questions, Mayor. As far as the housing and the modern coaches, what do you plan on those being like? Are those someone brings in their coach or it's rented? How does those housing and are those rented, short term, long lease? What do you plan on those?
The motor coach resort would be based upon a simple RV site that you currently would have. So I'm sure it's a short term stay. The housing part that I'm mentioning there. Part of the RFI was that the city isn't interested in selling the land, which I actually totally understand and respect. And one of the interesting things about a reinvention of what we consider mobile homes is that you guys could hold on to the land, and individual leases would be, I don't own a mobile home park, so I'm not quite sure how it works, but I'm pretty sure you basically own the unit, or you're renting the unit, and the landlord actually owns the land itself. So it's a long-term land lease, if you will. And I thought that that was an interesting way to work with the infrastructure that's already there and honor the city's intent to own the land outright, while at the same time addressing a real issue in terms of affordable housing, attainable housing, and kind of income discrepancies that we're dealing with at the moment.
One more thing, if I could. I forgot. Since the last presentation, we spoke to Historic Preservation Committee, took their advice, and I really, Chris and I actually went out on bicycles and rode. Their advice was preserve the runways and incorporate them some way, and we couldn't agree more. So that maybe something I glanced over, but we do intend to keep the runways and appreciate that part of the history as well.
And one other question about the club, that I didn't really hear you talk about that too much, but on the map there's a club with some maybe green grass in front of that.
We were just trying to show some more infrastructure that would need to be there for both of those. So any kind of high-end motor coach resort has some kind of amenity space, whether that be open space, barbecue, a pool, something like that. So we're trying to, honestly, we put a whole budget around this all three phases. And so I was trying to put real square footage on the ground so that we could give you guys some real numbers for what to look at. So it was basically like a monetary placeholder saying that we're not just gonna make a bunch of plots out there and walk away. Like there's gonna have to be some thought and some money put into it. So the club is more of an idea of an amenity to entice onto the site.
Okay, so more of a clubhouse use than like a club rage or
building. Yes, very much. Very much a clubhouse specific to what you would find at a current motor coach resort or what we're describing.
Okay.
But no, I don't do the club. they would never let me in.
Thank you.
I also had a question about the motor coach resort. These would be individuals bringing their Airstreams as opposed to you purchasing Airstreams and setting them up as a hotel.
We would love to discuss both options with the city. Once again, the idea being that you guys are maintaining the land. So, whatever. If you ask me right now, I would say that a mix is probably going to be most appropriate. That there be some units or tented structures that are available, and then there are going to be those bike enthusiasts that are going to come with the Sprinter, pulling the Jeep behind it, and they're going to want to just plop down and do their thing. So, as flexible as possible and as accommodating as possible is what we're going for.
I guess one of the things that's and maybe it's me, but I don't like to get on my bicycle when it's 118 degrees outside. So how would you consider using this? And this is probably off the top of your head when it's 115, 118 degrees, unless these are real bicycle enthusiasts.
And they are.
I'm
not one of them.
I'll tell you what really surprises me is that my bicycle business, my all-mountain cyclery customers, it doesn't really slow down that much during the summer. Those guys are troopers. When we throw an event, sometimes, the second Saturday in May is over 100 degrees, and it doesn't tend to affect the attendance. Desert rats, man, they're warriors.
I was going to say, I give up on trail running when it gets that hot, but I will jump on a bicycle.
Yeah, I do the spin bike in my basement.
There you go.
Also, since we're on the subject of bicycles, it's been really interesting to get to know all mountain cyclery, and I own an electric bike. I think this concept of what we think about of bicycles is also evolving quite a bit as we speak. And I'm seeing a lot of people that wouldn't normally be on a bicycle taking great advantage. My father wouldn't be able to ride a bicycle right now. He's in New York City, and he's all over the place because he's got electric assist on it. And so it's been really, really great for people like that. And so I think this concept of cyclist and mobility is changing.
Thank you.
We're always going to have problems. If one of our current problems is not enough vehicle parking, I think a better problem would be to have not enough bike racks, which is easily solved. I would love to reach out to local artists and local fabricators and have them do, different themed bike racks all throughout Boulder City. That is I'm sure anybody who drove around this weekend, I know my street, Denver Street, was packed. It was packed all the way down Colorado Street. It took forever to find a parking spot no matter where you went. I think I would rather see a lot of bike racks congested than parking spots congested, and I envision a future where this site enables that.
Thank you.
A couple questions I have. I'm not real sure on the layout. You referred to different phases of this. What exactly encompasses phase one?
Phase one is specific to the RFI. So the site was anywhere between 18 to 22 acres. It was the 8,000 square foot hangar, and then there's about 2 acres that are adjacent to the hangar, and then there's about 18 that envelop more or less what was the first 2 of the 3 runways that were out there. So phase one is specific to that acreage, and it would consist of redoing the hangar, some hospitality element, a potential housing element, and biking infrastructure, if not a cyclocross track, which is an outdoor track, kind of dirt track, or crit racing, which is even more popular, which we found out is...
Crit racing? Who knew? It's a thing. It's apparently pretty big.
Exists here in the valley. There's already crit racing clubs the youth are already signed up with. And basically, they just need a flat surface. So like I said, it could be parking one day. It could be an event venue the next. And those are the 3 elements of phase one, and they're all specific to the RFI.
And we would like to consider those a la carte. The primary interest being, let's proceed. Let's find a use that works rather than let any one of the specific uses.
Thank you. The reason I ask about that is when I look at what you have sketched out here, I don't see any provisions for use of the runways. It looks like the runways just disappear into this project. Mm-hmm. So that was the point of my question was the RFI spoke specifically to preservation of the hangar and the runways. Right. It didn't specify any housing projects. It was specifically for preservation of the hangar and the runways. And as I say, when I look at what you have sketched here, the runways are obliterated, and it looks like the main feature is this club that is in front of the hangar space. Is that correct?
Graphically, yes. In spirit, no. So I was just trying to...
I'm sorry, I'm a lot better at graphics than I am at reading spiritual things, but...
well, and nowhere in here does it mention the club as the main impetus, so it's about the hangar. If it ended up... I'm sorry, I don't have the drawing up in front of me right now. And I'm sorry it's not highlighted. That main drag that I'm showing coming down the middle by the contentious club is actually one of the old runways. I'm actually following it all the way through. So there's the runway. And one of the precedents that I've seen on all these other projects in Austin and in Denver, what were really interesting is any of the runways that they weren't able to reuse, they recycled. So in other words, they took the asphalt, chopped it right back up, and turned it into whatever infrastructure that they needed for the new sites, which I thought was a brilliant way of honoring the runways that were there.
Do you believe, you've talked about these 3 phases, so I'm guessing that phase 1 has something to do with the hangar and something to do with something out in front of the hangar? Is that safe to say?
Correct. And if I had the original...
Is that in the spirit of what you intend there?
No, if you looked at the original RFI, it's all listed out on a budgetary space, so no spirits whatsoever. $400,000 for the hangar renovation. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but it was about $100,000 a lot to do the hospitality infrastructure. Similar numbers for the housing side, and then we set aside another $250,000 for the cyclocross or any kind of bike structure, and that was based upon a cyclocross park in Illinois.
In general, phase one, we see just the project as a whole, a lot more emphasis on the outcome than the income. We're not trying to pack in as many units as we can. Quite frankly, the three components, they're relatively flexible. I do like the idea of a motor coach resort. We've gotten pushback on the housing pretty early on, but the event space in the airport hangar would just be tremendous. Outside of that, in and around the runways, I see a lot of grass, I see a lot of bike paths, I see possibly a crit racing track, but in general, just a more of a park-like, more of a wide open space. Like Chris said, easily mobilized, not a tremendous amount of infrastructure.
Do you believe then if we, I guess what I'm trying to get at is then phase one is the hangar and something in front of the hangar.
Correct.
Phase two is all the housing you propose. And phase three is the velodrome. Is that roughly accurate?
Sounds good.
Okay. Would phase one be financially successful on its own then?
Yes.
Okay. We've already heard from residents. We have a brand new residential housing development right in that same space there.
Correct.
It's
very nice, by the way.
You've talked about having music festivals there. How would that impact that brand new development?
I think what we're trying to do, that was part of why I introduced the housing element in the same general area where the park currently is, to honor that side as basically a quieter residential zone and make the northeast section a little bit more commercial, a little bit louder, a little bit more active.
Well, you also have housing on the other side of that too. It's just a few units there, but there is housing there as well.
Correct. That just started to the south. I have yet to visit, but they're single-family homes and there's a lot of space there. And then there's a street break. What we're trying to do is create a neighborhood for the area. So if anything, I'm trying to put that. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name of the properties right now.
Oh, the cottages?
The cottages. I think the cottages are actually really well done. They're high density. That's what you need. You could make an argument what I'm describing as high density. So in other words, I would like to not ignore them in any way, shape, or form. It's actually build a neighborhood around them to help them basically have a community as opposed to just frontage off of one road. I met with one of the residents after the Historic Preservation Commission, and I let them know that, my dream is that they could walk to the barbecue place in some pleasant fashion from one part of the site to the other, that they'd actually want to be engaged and make the site part of their neighborhood and tell people, I live next to the cool event space.
Furthermore, we have, between the Dillinger and Forge, we have about 8-year track record of hosting events, a lot of them live music events, in very close proximity to residential. The Forge is directly on top of houses, and we have a great working relationship with our neighbors. And by the way, we're right next to the police station. So between the two of those, we're going to hear about it. If we get out of hand, we're going to hear about it. And 8 years in, there's a reason why we're still allowed to do the block party. There's a reason why our conditional use with Forge hasn't been revoked. And I think that other than mitigating factors like noise deadening and maybe maybe a landscape barrier, however we mitigate the sound itself. I think just respecting that where we are in proximity to residential and limit the hours. By the way, that would also accomplish a second goal, which is if a live music festival, if it cuts off at 9, people aren't going to be done. They're going to want to go downtown. So maybe they jump on their bike and they ride downtown. These are all things we look forward to working out with the city, but I have a vested interest in preserving my, well, it's a double-edged sword. I kind of have to not go out there and make a bunch of noise because I can't let it affect my current business. I've got every bit of my livelihood is tied up in Boulder City businesses, so I have a vested interest in preserving that reputation.
I'm not sure you hear from everyone, because I hear from some other folks that have a different outlook on the volume of music that all of the establishments in the uptown area create. And that's a concern, and I don't think that a landscape barrier is going to do that. The folks that purchase those homes, they may or may not want to be next to the cool new place, but if they don't have a lot of options there.
They also purchased a house that's directly off of a major road, where if their backyard neighbor is Taco Bell and
it's
an auto
not a
body
music
shop.
festival, though. It's a 35-mile-an-hour street. That's
It sounds like it's time to revisit the noise ordinance. We'd be happy to participate in that.
We're looking at it. With the other things, all of the housing, if none of the housing were to occur here, which was not part of what the RFI was, the amount of land that this encompasses, the RFI was somewhere between, as you said, 18 to 22 acres. This now is expanded out to over 100 acres, I believe. If the land, you don't believe that's correct?
52.
Okay. The additions that I did bring it up much closer to 100, but let's say it's 52 then. If none of the housing occurs out there that you have proposed here, how's that going to impact your project?
It would not.
Okay, so if the housing is eliminated, then...
We would still proceed.
Okay, and does that apply with the velodrome as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I understand, Mr. Turner, that you kind of specialize in the event type thing. When we were talking about the components of this RFI, one of the things that I tried to get forth was we have a number of events already here in Boulder City. For the most part, I think the town supports those very well. But also folks know that when Art in the Park comes, we're going to be frozen up in a lot of areas here in our city. So I have a concern about turning this into an event venue on every weekend or however many times it is. Right now we have about 6 events per year. So, every month in the fall and spring. And then we get a little bit of a break. One of the reasons for having the bypass built was to eliminate a lot of the traffic on what's now Boulder City Parkway. So again, if you do not have the ability to stage these music festivals, things like that, do you believe that the project would still be financially successful?
You're asking me or him?
If we don't have the ability to, meaning
stage music festivals, and
what would prevent us from staging them?
That you would not be given permission to do it?
I think it works. As I said, I think the uses are limitless. I'm not sure I would understand the logic of not doing music festivals, but
well, I understand you don't understand that.
Yes, it would still work too, but at the same time, it wouldn't be honoring the RFI's request for new visitors. I don't know how you would get new visitors out there if you're not doing something new.
Well, one of the things that was originally in the RFI was for the RV park, and that was the new visitors. That was what was in the original RFI, was an RV park.
Not that we saw.
Okay.
Can we get clarification
That's all.
on that?
That's new information to us.
Okay. Mr. Mays?
So, Mayor, you're saying that in the RFI there was something specific to an RV park?
Well, I believe we were talking about how to best utilize the runways.
So, in the RFI, it didn't highlight any specific uses. It talked about, again, the three objectives: preserving and promoting the historic nature of the site, bringing visitors to the city, and being innovative in quality design. The intent of the RFI was not to narrow ideas, but to have respondents come to the city with their ideas to be able to evaluate whether there was an interest in it or not.
All right, thank you. I'll take that part of it out of the equation then. The idea was not to bring a massive number of visitors here. And again, I understand that may not be something that you understand or agree with.
A wedding sounds like a wonderful event.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah. Who doesn't like a wedding?
Well, people who've been divorced several times may not like
Didn't have a good wedding to begin with.
Does anybody know estimated attendance for Art in the Park?
I've heard 100,000.
Oh, all right. So an 8,000 square foot event venue, based on square footage and occupancy, egress, everything like that, should house somewhere just under 1,000 people. That should be like the limit for occupancy. It's not in downtown. It's out. There are several major means of egress and
Actually,
access.
there's two currently.
Meaning, and I guess the third one would be Veterans Memorial if we extend it out there. Yeah.
I think you might mean Adams.
Is that Adams?
Yeah.
Veterans Memorial, Adams?
No, Veterans Memorial is Veterans Memorial. But
Okay, so is it? I guess it's Adams until it gets to Veterans.
Now we're
Memorial.
on 100 acres. Now
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
on 100 acres.
Yeah.
This is
Well,
beyond,
you could keep going. I mean, there's
Correct, and
probably 1,000 acres out there you guys could roll on, but
if you give me the opportunity to make a plan for that, I will.
no. I think you've come to the wrong place for developing 1,000 acres. But is there anything else you would like to add to this?
I'm really excited about this project. I think this is a gigantic opportunity, not only for myself and my group, but also for Boulder City to take a leadership role, not only in Southern Nevada, but beyond. I'm really, really proud to, and I have a letter here from the School of Architecture at Taliesin, from the dean, here from our brethren on the other side of the water in Arizona, stating their interest in collaborating on this project and looking deeply at what you guys got going on here. So there's going to be so many opportunities for things like this, both educational and commercial, that I think you guys are going to be super proud of, and so will we. Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we have the next proposal?
Yes, this would be the Litchens proposal.
Hello, I'm Stuart Litchens, owner of 1495 and 1497 Boulder City Parkway, which is currently Boulder City RV, which is operated by Caleb.
Hi.
So we kind of took an approach of trying to solve problems in order to accomplish our mission. So we looked at it from a little bit of a different approach. Rather than like what can we do to utilize this space, is what problems can we solve. And so I've lived here for 15 years, owned a business here for the same amount of time until we outgrew our space on the highway. I own Boulder Boats. And for over 10 years, I've been trying to acquire this hangar so we could retain our business here in Boulder City, but we've unfortunately outgrew the lot, which if you've driven down Boulder City Parkway, you can see Caleb's about to do the same. So solving our personal problem is to get more space, and that's the hangar, utilization of the hangar for maintenance for RVs and for expansion of the current business. Our business, or Caleb's business, my property, is the only property that has highway frontage, and that's something that I would caution anybody in the future, including council, is that proposing something with 22 acres as any kind of venue for whatever purpose with absolutely no highway frontage and no signage is very risky. So our business, our proposal solves, like I said, solves a couple problems. One's for us, but also for the city. Our second phase involves, the first one is the maintenance facility using the hangar. Second is what we would call a cooperative effort for public Boulder City resident storage facility for boats and RVs. And as a longtime resident here, it's always been a heated debate to keep the public parking of RVs on the street. And so rather than tell residents you can't do that any longer, this now presents a solution to that problem. So we initially just proposed, and this is an RFI, so we're just giving general basic ideas is kind of what our mission is at this point. Our idea is to dedicate this space, which currently I think is at 5 acres, for free, city subsidized, free because you own the land, but operated by our business, facilitating secure RV storage for starting with the historic district and getting those congested streets free of, at the owner's consent to just offer them a solution of where can they put their RV or their boat. And so that's what our first phase, or second phase is. Our third phase is your traditional covered high-end RVs, boat storage, concierge type of service. This fulfills a need where this city's full, Vegas is essentially full, and Caleb, it complements his business and his customers as it does mine, as well as I go to after operating for 15 years in Boulder City and in Henderson, I could go to any storage facility in Boulder City and see a large percentage of the customers are our customers that we've sent there. And most of them are, as far as covered goes, it's full there. You can't get covered storage anywhere. So there's definitely a need for that. And being a boat dealer, I'll tell you one thing that's just always been so frustrating to me, and I see it all the time, and I see it here tonight, and I look at right behind you, Mayor, it says home of Hoover Dam. The byproduct of Hoover Dam is Lake Mead. We don't accommodate those visitors. There's over 8 million people a year come to Lake Mead, and as a city, we don't accommodate those visitors. Try to go to Grant's Restaurant with a boat behind you. It's very difficult. I mean, with McDonald's has some RV parking, but beyond that, it's really challenging to have an RV or a boat in this town. So for us, accommodating those visitors, we could do it in a couple different ways. So as far as the hotels and motels, we'll work with them to have transient storage, secure storage for, you could go down to Lake Mead Lodge, but then you leave your boat with your $1,000 surfboard or your water skis or whatever sitting out in your boat for anybody to help themselves too. So it's a bit of a challenge for the visitors, and the argument I've always made is that Hoover Dam gets visitors to drive straight through Boulder City, go down to the dam, and then go right back to Las Vegas. Lake Mead gets people to stay here and brings families here for days on end. And so that's a much better visitor for us to cater to and accommodate to. And so different mission of us you go to Lake Havasu, that city revolves around the lake, and we don't embrace it as much in Boulder City, which is unfortunate, but it creates opportunity for us. And so also, in addition to accommodating those visitors and bringing new visitors, we've planned a campground, which would be for short-term occupancy. So no more than 7 days. We don't really accommodate that either in this city. So that was another problem we looked at is, I used to sit on the board for the Chamber of Commerce, and that was one thing that we'd always kind of looked at and, back in the day, and that was camping. And there's really not an option for people for whether they're coming to events or they're coming to a mountain bike race or they're going to the lake or whatever, unless you go down into the park, which is so far removed from all the restaurants and everything and all the services in Boulder City, then we're pretty limited in that option. So that's essentially our ideas. Not a lot of detail in our presentation because this is an RFI, and I can't even call myself an applicant at this point, just a suggester of ideas. It's a strange position to be in here to kind of lay out our cards for the public to see and say that's a great idea, or to hear your feedback and then put it out for everybody else to duplicate and and expand upon. Our unique proposition is that we currently own adjacent property that has highway frontage that is complementary to these ideas that we're submitting, and economically it's viable. We're not looking for any public funding other than some subsidy of land lease for public use of the free storage that we're offering for the residents. So that's essentially our ideas. Our intent in speaking with the Historical Preservation Committee is to keep a theme of aviation throughout it. Caleb and I are both pilots, so I have an appreciation for aviation. And one thing I would just advise to is to be very cautious. And our intent is to keep the runway, but to keep runway markings, and inevitably you'll have an airplane land there. So we will do our best to kind of reduce size a little bit to make it obvious that this is not an active runway. But that is our intent, is to use runway markings for identifiers, to have a public space that has and throughout the facilities to have markings that would be like taxiway markings, to resident storage, to concierge type storage, and then also to the campgrounds, and then also number all the campgrounds as far as keeping that aviation theme. So and then having placards throughout as far as like representing what this was, and because otherwise Bullock Field is simply driven past, and for years I operated a business with that hangar right behind us and nobody knew it was there, and they'll continue to not know it's there because there's no other opportunity. And with my background being in advertising before starting the boat business, I know what it takes to compete with the Las Vegas businesses for that visitor dollar, and it's not cheap to try to compete with Cirque du Soleil for visitors' time and money. And so to draw people to Boulder City is very challenging and expensive, and so that's essentially our proposition. Caleb, ideas, I should say. Caleb, anything?
I think I just go back to the Caleb, great by the way, Boulder City RV. I think the original idea was to go, what could we fix for the city? And so the real heart of the community parking was exactly that. If there's going to be a space for a festival, if there's going to be a space for people to ride their bikes through town or through the downtown area, if we could clear some of that congestion. Now, trying to force people to do it could be tough. Saying, hey, we're gonna make an amendment, you can't park your RV anymore. However, if the community backs something where it's like, look, it costs you nothing to take your trailer that's blocking my view, or it makes it tough for me to back out of my driveway, and just move it into secured, 24-hour monitored storage, and it costs you nothing, and you'll start to see the community go, it's a lot better place to do it. The other thing is it will discourage theft and some of the other concerns. So to the real heart of it, I think it's a major fix for something that we've already got going on.
We also feel that this is probably one of the least intrusive uses for the designated property, in that a parked RV makes no noise. Neither does a boat. It's solving some problems. It's not going to have high traffic. It's not going to be disruptive to the neighbors. So for that, we feel it's going to be the least intrusive. The runway is the main thoroughfare for what we propose for phase 2, with parking on either side of it. And so that would be used as the runway. As far as the elevation of the cottages versus the way that we would set up parking, lower sized boats on the north end, and larger RVs, taller RVs on the south end, which slopes down and away from the properties, really would not have as much effect of view, but it's certainly not going to have any effect on the residents as far as disruption or domestic violence or whatever else could happen with it. And by no means, I don't mean any disrespect to anybody else. I mean, everything Grant touches is awesome, and I frequent it quite a bit. So if he does something, I'll love that as well. But I just think that our proposal is just, it's financially viable. We're confident in that. Both experienced business operators and And this is just an expansion of what we're currently doing and solving some problems for the city. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Councilwoman Bridges?
Yeah, I had, you said, and you didn't have to pay anything, so you would be offering this boat storage, RV and boat storage for free?
So long as you offer us that parcel for free, yes. Yeah, if you're charging us rent for that parcel, we'll charge rent. So it's just a matter of, and this is, again, ideas, right, not specifics. And so, yeah, absolutely, that's our intent. I mean, if the city doesn't see the benefit in offering this solution to get off-street parking, then absolutely, we don't need that phase of the project. We could just go to paid storage like, a traditional business would for when you have raw land, but.
So, I think one of the things that I've continually looked for in terms of this property and others, people have these great ideas, and I ask this ridiculous question like, how do you create a revenue stream? Mm-hmm. And they'll usually look at me, okay, so, which is why I figured it's a ridiculous question, but I'm assuming it would be a continuation of your current business.
Exactly.
That would be, that your primary business is the hangar, using the hangar for storage and repair of your items you're selling, and would that be considered a showroom?
No, ma'am. So people always want to see the pretty, right? So we would put all the ugly inside. That's essentially what we would do. To go back to your previous question or remark about, and again, we had a really in-depth conversation about, do we really want to show all five of our cards,
Okay.
We can't, because there still is an RFP to be done. However, we thought that it would be beneficial to the city to identify the highest density areas. Like you get to the smaller streets in town that if you've got catty corner to each other, 2 RVs or an RV and a boat, I mean, you got to be a professional driver to get through. So we identify those areas and say, hey, for these specific areas, whether it's in the historic district, because that's kind of where we started, like, the smaller area, the older area is probably the best place to say, hey, you can. And then as you go outside of those areas and maybe the less impactful areas, you say, hey, it's not $165 and put it on a waiting list, it's $25. And that just goes just like with the RC, the spirit of the RC lease is just enough to cover what it would cost to run the facility. We'll make our revenue off of the extension.
That aspect of the business too is completely going to be contingent upon what the residents and what council wants to do, really, because obviously it's not a revenue generator for us. It's leverage to try to get our mission accomplished, which is we'll create revenue from our storage and we'll create revenue from the expansion of that business, which, by the way, it's a huge tax generator for the city and for the state. Selling high unit RVs, just like selling high unit boats, I mean, we generate over $1 million in sales tax revenue annually, which is now gone from Boulder City because we outgrew it. And so hopefully that's not the case with Caleb. He needs more space already. I mean, after just 2 1/2 or 2 short years, he's outgrown it. But many other service type businesses don't generate that tax base, and just because of the nature of it, and a lot of it's not taxed. But yeah, when you have major unit sales, it generates a lot of tax dollars. So. And DMV dollars as well. So, and that all ultimately affects and benefits Boulder City. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mayor Adamson. So you didn't really talk too much about preserving the hangar. So what is your plan with the hangar itself? Of you painting it, things like that?
Yeah. So I mean, our idea is to essentially keep it as original. I mean, its use is going to be effectively the same thing as a hangar's purpose is maintenance. And so, that is what it will be used for. So no intent of doing any kind of deconstruction, modification, or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just typical preservation of it, to make it look original is kind of our intent. So really nothing else beyond that. It's And again, it's not a public thoroughfare. It is not seen by many at all, and it will only be seen by the people frequenting the current business there, and then also the storage customers. So, and then the transient RV, just clients. So, I mean, it's not going to be a very high traffic thing, but it's still our intent to preserve it as, it looked originally.
Okay. So bringing it back to what it originally looked like.
Yeah.
That car. Okay. Then I had a couple other questions about, would this be kind of a landscape campground? Where you had trees and things like that?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the door to door to door kind of thing. And so for us, it'd be more of like a meandering kind of road with pads essentially. So, and then, eventually some will be dry camping and then eventually, and this is why we have this as phase 4, is because that's a longer term ROI for a campground like that, but certainly a need for it. So, our intent is to have more spaced out and also charge a premium for it too, because the more you charge, the better clientele you'll get, really. So, I mean, it's not something that we're looking for, kind of anyhow, you get the point.
Certain clientele. Okay, so I like that you're tying in the airport theme with the signage and things like that. The current property grade is pretty steep. Would you have direct access to the back of your current business, or is that a huge drop?
Yeah, so no, there's to the east side of that property along Bullock Field Road. And actually as part of the redevelopment of Boulder City Parkway, we're actually adding, because of one of our 3 driveways has been blocked now, we're actually adding a side entrance onto Bullock.
Okay.
So that transition will keep inner property traffic, so to speak, off of the main thoroughfare, but also there's the opportunity and actually kind of a natural roadway that was built at one time, kind of where that temporary container is on the south side, kind of the southeast corner of the property right now. So yeah, there's the opportunity to, and that was always my plan when I operated out of that facility, was to, if we could get that hangar, to have that internal road there. However, now with the access on Bullock, it'll kind of solve that problem as well.
Okay. And the last thing is, what kind of protection would you do for the property around the RV and boat storage?
Yeah, it'd be fencing. It would be secure screen fencing. So, and, obviously the lighting is something that's going to be concern for residents. So that's something that we'd be real conscious of to kind of keep to, more directional and keep, kind of limited as well. So, but yeah, that's, with having the city storage, that wouldn't be lit. That would be behind the cottages. Whereas the other, I think Red Baron or something, those are surrounded by commercial operations, and lighting is, so I mean, we'll still do what we can to secure it, but also to be respectful of the neighbors.
Okay. Yeah. That's all my questions for that. Thank you.
Thank you. I know I had gone and spoken with Caleb after they had made their presentation to the Preservation Committee. There are aspects of this that I like. One is that the impact of this is a little bit lower than some of the other proposals. I like the fact that you're incorporating the runways into what you're looking to do. I think it was last year sometime there was an airliner that was supposed to be headed to Berlin and landed in Edinburgh, Scotland, and they'd only taken off from London. So apparently that does happen where pilots get confused. But it seems like that there are ways around having that happen. The community storage, for any of us that live in the older parts of town, RVs and boats on the street are certainly an issue. I think I appreciate the fact that you're keeping that in mind for the city. The storage situation in general here in Boulder City, from talking to all the others, they're full. There are no places to do that. I do think that you'd mentioned we don't necessarily cater to visitors to Lake Mead. and there are millions of them that come through each year. Having the opportunity to have a location might take a year or two for people to get to know that it's there, but I think that also fills a need that we're missing here right now. The fact of the restoration of the hangar, can you go into a little more detail about what you're anticipating doing with the building itself?
It really would be no different than what it is right now. Doors would get opened, RVs would be inside for the purpose of maintenance. The current lot on the Parkway doesn't have service facilities. I mean, there's a little garage there. When we were working on boats there, everything was outside. So yeah, it's just an ability to get the maintenance inside. And so that's essentially all that it'd be. In RVs, you don't use lifts or anything like that. I mean, they're not doing any chassis work or anything like that. So it'd be nothing kind of intrusive or damaging to the facility, you know, other than just doors being open, RVs put inside, toolboxes inside, and that's really it. Some mobile swamp coolers, and that would be the operation of it. So it wouldn't be public facing at all. So that would be it.
Well, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
In terms of aesthetic, I think the goal all along was to try to find the best representation of that building from the 40s and 50s, and then just go back to that, because that's the best way to tell a story. Is this is a screenshot or a snapshot from what it looked like 70 years ago. In terms of that, open to interpretation. If it's, you know, a mural on the side, because really all you have is two sides of visibility unless you open it to Adams. So, I mean, that's probably, if it was me, the best view of the entire hangar is from a car on Adams. And so all we can really do is make it look like it looked 75 years ago.
Okay. With the building itself then, you know, there are some concrete aprons left. Not much of that is left around that building. Do you anticipate having to do any additional work around the building itself?
Oh.
Around the hangar itself?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, right now it's space that's needed. So yeah, I mean, asphalting, concrete is very expensive. But yeah, I mean, we would be securing that yard just so they're not with fencing, and also to keep it where it's obvious this isn't a public space, because there will be public roadways between the facilities, and then also through the public area, you know, commemorating the hangar. So that would be secured, but yeah, at this point, I mean, it's.
No, undoubtedly, there'll be some. Sorry, I keep walking away from this mic. I don't want to get too close to him. He's worked hard today. Undoubtedly, there'll be some dirt work that needs to be done in terms of grading and things like that. We'll have to address. Ideally, I'd like to have an easy access path, a non-public access path from the backside of our existing dealership down into the service area. But beyond that, probably gravel, some dirt work moved around. I mean, it's not going to be very impactful, and quite frankly, you guys don't want it to be, because the more that we invest financially into it, the more we have two options: either extend the life of that lease or ask for help. And so the goal from the start for him and I is, we're not asking for help other than maybe some subsidized rent on areas that are held for the community. No, you know, and some RDA dollars if we're eligible.
I think the other thing too, to just to be completely transparent, is it's easy to picture the hangar and this majestic giant hangar and see its history, but the reality of it is it's going to be completely encompassed and engulfed by 12-foot tall RVs. And so it's not going to be this barren open space that it is right now, and it looks so cool as it is. And that's not to have any disrespect or disregard for what it is, but that is essentially, I mean, that will be its use. I mean, it's going to be actually a working hangar again. So it's not going to really be many opportunities for photo ops or anything, because it'll just be surrounded by RVs if business is good as planned. So.
Well, I think, you know, we need to be honest too, that, you know, the original hangar is long gone at the field. The Elks Club is the original terminal building, but the appearances changed quite a bit of it. So yes, we have a couple of remnants left of Bullock Field, but much of what was there originally is not there any longer, so.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions from anyone? All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are we looking at any direction or
Mayor, it's certainly the
or can we move on?
Mayor, it's certainly the opportunity for the council to provide direction to staff of preferred interests that would allow us to proceed with an RFP if that is the desire of the city council.
Is there appetite to do that at this time, or would folks like a little opportunity to think about it and?
For discussion, I would be interested in seeing an RFP. They're quite different presentations. I guess my concern is that if we continue to wait and the building continues to just sit there, it will become a line item somewhere in some future agenda. So I guess my feeling is I'd like to see an RFP process.
Do you have any particular criteria in mind, or?
Oh, goodness. Do you suggest any? I'm not sure. With the two ideas that were demonstrated. Looks like we got a comment.
We'll have comment later.
Is that what you're going to do? Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. I just want to make sure I have an opportunity to do
Sure,
that.
thank you.
I'm not sure, would it be only those who have presented or future?
Well, I think what we're talking about right now is either providing staff with some ideas or criteria as far as the writing of a RFP.
That is correct. So
Or waiting and suggesting something once we've had an opportunity to.
Yeah, you certainly don't have to make the decision tonight. You could wait, and we could bring this back. But the objective was to have ideas presented to the council that spur response from the council and give us more specific direction on what would be contained within the RFP, specifically to the type of uses you'd like to see. And then we would move forward with the RFP process.
I know for sure, however we go from there, I know for my personal preference is something that would be low impact on the community. That we're looking at residential that wasn't there 2 years ago. That we're taking into consideration business impact and residential impact, whether it's noise or traffic.
Anyone else?
I have some comments. So I went back and looked and reviewed master plan and maps and everything old that I could find about this property. And when the master plan was created, I got the feeling that the hangar wasn't yet seen as historic or something to preserve. In the long run, a lot of the maps had this whole area filled with housing eventually. And keeping commercial in the front and housing behind. And so now 20 years later, we see it as a more historic and something to keep around. And so it kind of gives us a dilemma because since that time, houses have been put on either side of it, which really limits the use of anything that would go well with housing. So, it kind of leaves us in what's a use that can be happy for the residents that are encroached right upon this property now and a future use for this property. And I agree that a use that's, this is a lease, so we have to remember that. So something that can be brought back to what it is an ideal use, something less permanent. I didn't think that I would like the RV storage, but to be honest, that's something I actually do like because of the low impact, because it's very temporary, and because it solves a couple of problems. I know that camping is pretty big with Lake Mead, and it's often full, the campground down at Lake Mead. And RV storage has been a problem for a long time. So I do like the low impact. And I've had a lot of public comment about having museums there and having a space museum or aviation museum or something to that effect. I would like that. I think it would be low impact also, and it would use the actual hangar and bring people to it. But it's just about, with that issue, it'd be about the financing of it and getting someone that would, you wouldn't really make money off of that. And so getting someone that would take that on is the question. So I think that's all my, and I know that area has also been used in the past for a carnival. I don't know if that would still be something that could be done or not, but people are always looking for extra space in Boulder City. So that's my comment.
Mr. Adams, you're still abstaining? Okay. I think those are some good comments. I do think that I would prefer a little bit of time to organize my thoughts on it. I am in agreement that with the residential we have there, and it's not just the cottages, we have 2 mobile home parks, well-established mobile home parks that are very close to that as well. I think that there are some things that we need here in Boulder City. I believe that the presentation, it's referred to as the Litchens proposal, constrained itself to the land that we had described in the RFI, rather than an extremely large development that takes up an entire area there. So that would be my proposal. Maybe we take a week or 2 to get our thoughts into staff if that's what we'd like to do, and maybe either our one meeting in December or a meeting in January, we'd take another look at this. Any objection? Okay. Thank you. Item number 13, review RFP, request for proposal for sale of track 350, which is the land around Boulder Creek Golf Course.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I'm Brock Armitrott, your contracts real estate manager. Back in 2016, the city had floated an RFP to try to sell the land around the golf course, and at the same time, track 349, which is now under development by Storybook Homes. Between the 2 RFPs, only one received a bid, and that was the track 349 where Storybook Homes is building. We received no bids at all for the land around the golf course. Staff contacted the Home Builders Association and actually spoke in person with Lennar Homes to find out just why we didn't receive any bids. And the universal answer was nobody could make their projects pencil at that location. They decided that the cost of the land just was too high, and the size of the lots was too large for them to make it work. The minimum asking price back in 2016 was $373,000 an acre. That was based on an appraisal. So staff looked into the appraisal process to see what had happened and see if there were any things that could have changed in the appraisal that would have modified it had they known more information. We discovered that the appraiser at that time did not know that the city was going to require that whoever developed track 350 would have to construct a rather large storm sewer pipeline right along Bristlecone. And then after constructing said line, would have to then dedicate back to the city land he'd already purchased from the city, another 100-foot wide strip of land along the entire length of Bristlecone. So earlier this year, staff went out and had the land reappraised with those qualifications so that the appraiser was properly appraising the property. And the new value came in at just over $233,000 an acre, or for the 44.98 acres, comes out to $10,495,000. Under state law, as well as our city charter, this is the minimum bid price we're allowed to accept with RFP. That does not stop anyone from bidding more, nor does it stop the city from asking for more. It's just what the minimum amount is that we have to advertise as the minimum acceptable bid. The RFP in your packet is, this has the same criteria that we had back in 2016. There were concerns raised at other times about would the homes all have flat backs, or would there be narrow streets? Would the lot sizes be reduced? That's all a political decision. The RFP makes it clear that they had to be standard-sized public streets, that the homes have to vary in appearance and ratio from two-story to one-story, that they have variety in the backs of the homes and so on. I would expect that any proposers will likely ask for variances, and it would be up to the city council to decide if they would want to grant those or not. The RFP does make it clear that we won't entertain any variances. It also said that in 2016. So again, that staff's trying to do our part, so we see what happens. So at this time, if you have any additional input in what you would like to see in the RFP document, I'm ready to take notes so we can modify the RFP. The plan is to release it for 90 days. We'll provide it directly to the Home Builders Association plus direct mail to known interested home builders, as well as with our local realtors, and then of course in the Las Vegas Review-Journal as required by state law. Again, back in 2016, it was alleged that nobody knew about it. That's why nobody bid. When I had my meeting with Lennar Homes, they made it abundantly clear that everybody knew about it. Apparently they talk. And to a member, every single member of the Home Builders Association knew about the project, and it was all about price. That's why nobody bid at that time. So if you have any suggestions, I'm ready. Otherwise, ready for a motion to tell me to go forth and make us some money.
Council, questions or comments? Councilwoman Folda?
Let me get my thoughts. Okay, so the evaluation sheet that's on the current, well, the one that we've used before, I guess, for the request for proposal, refers a lot to the other adjacent property, tract 349.
We can remove all references to 349.
So if we could update that. There is I had some questions about, is Bristlecone a private street?
It's a public street.
Okay. In there is a option, we're asking them to provide a median in the middle of Bristlecone.
It's an 80-foot wide street. In the initial drawings that we had prepared back in 2016 had showed a landscape median down the middle. It's certainly not required. It was just at the time that was what was desired.
Okay. So I had a question about that. And then there's also because of that roundabout, it caused an possible, because of the Bristlecone median, it had an option there to create a roundabout on Bristlecone.
At the very end where it transitions into Clubhouse was one of the possible options, anticipating that they would have at that corner a street going off to service whatever homes were built along the golf course at that point.
Okay, on the south side, on the Clubhouse Drive, or?
Right where Clubhouse transitions and goes north becomes a Bristlecone.
Okay.
If the city council doesn't want roundabouts, we can remove it. They seem to work well in the low traffic areas of the Las Vegas and Henderson areas.
Mm-hmm.
That's why staff thought this might be a good location to put one in.
Is the green space then going to be on both ends of Bristlecone, on the Clubhouse Drive and on the entrance on the Adams side?
Along the western side of Bristlecone, we'll have a 100-foot wide green space because that's where the sewer line is going to be. The storm sewer will be underground. It'll be a 100-foot wide area that will be required to be landscaped.
Okay, but that's on the side of the road. I'm talking about in the median.
Oh, the median.
Yeah.
The current design, I think, had low shrubs, but again, it all depends on.
Where was the location of that median? That's my question.
On Bristlecone,
Yeah.
right down
The whole street?
the whole length, other than the openings for the existing roads that go into the east. We have 3 roads, Cry Court, and the other 2.
Okay. Yeah.
As well as whatever roads get put into the left.
I mean, I'd be a fan of removing that center median, and a roundabout option. I didn't see anything in there about any open space or green space like we've had on track 349. We required some open space. I don't know if we did it per acre, but I didn't see anything in this new proposal for any open space.
And that was on purpose. It all has to do with the geometry.
Okay.
The track 349 was more or less square or rectangular in shape and lent itself well to having centralized green space. The track 350 will, because of the narrowness of the land, you'll have a center street with homes on either side, with some homes backing up against the golf course and the homes on the other side of the street backing up against either Bristlecone, Adams, or Clubhouse. They will have, by default, a rather large green space to the west, the golf course. Although I agree, kids aren't going to be out there playing on the jungle gym and what have you. But because of the geometry of the land, other than at the northeast corner where the land transitions, where it's a wide spot, that would be the only location where green space may be feasible.
Okay. I'd like to entertain, not a requirement, but a suggestion to have some green space. I know at the entrance of the storybook, basically the green space in the front there is just the size of a lot probably. But for the houses that do not abut the golf course, they wouldn't have any really access to anything.
You're right.
Green space. Then can we talk about the phase sale and how that's working with Storybook, and is that a possibility on here, or what's that? Phases, selling it in phases.
It's always a possibility. Our charter allows for it, as well as state law. With Storybook, they have taken down the second phase as required, and they're already talking to the city about taking down the third phase early. The sales have picked up. That's partly what's driving the interest by the home builders over in the valley. They see that homes are being built in Boulder and that there is a market for the higher end home. Likely, if it's sold to one developer, they may ask to take it down in phases just because of the carrying cost of land. If that were the case, I would recommend we impose the same requirements that we did on Storybook, that they install all the improvements for the entire development up front, and then as they exercise phases, that they install the streets and all the other improvements that go along with it. But the utility infrastructure, it's needed to be installed, especially if they start at the north end. The sewer needs to get to the south end because that's where the pipe is. And likewise, water, well, we always want a looped system. Electrical, we want a looped system. So very likely they'll propose a phase to take down. Whether you would like to accept that or not, that would be purely up to you. It's possible we also may receive multiple bids, and we may want to award the upper section to builder A and the lower section to builder B. That's always a possibility as well.
Okay. I think that's kind of all. Yep, that's kind of, I think, all I have right now.
So make sure I captured it. You don't want a median in Bristlecone, no roundabouts, and add a green space requirement. Okay. Did I miss anything?
Well, if we get into the housing part of it, yeah, there's a whole list. But
okay.
I think you got the idea of what kind of housing we're looking for from previous meetings.
Councilwoman Bridges?
Yeah, some of the details I didn't want to get into so much right now as guaranteeing, how do we guarantee that we don't end up with similar issues of, okay, we say we don't want flat backs against the walls and we don't, and we want staggered sizes. to actually make sure that all that happens, that we don't have that situation with the variances. And some of this is even perceptions. I mean, this is people coming up to me and saying, you know, it was all about the variances, and we give the shop away. And going forward, the way to make sure that we don't have those situations, that the builders don't come here and say, oh, Boulder City's going to be great. We'll get all these variances, and there are perceptions of that. So how do I answer that? How do we answer that question?
Well, that perception is actually true of all cities in Clark County. You can look on any agenda for a city council or planning commission in Henderson, Las Vegas, or North Las Vegas for a subdivision development, and they'll have variance requests. The power with whether or not to grant variances lies with the planning commission, and if it's appealed ultimately with the city council. So it's with you.
Right.
If you don't want variances, again, in the RFP, we're making it clear we don't plan to approve variances. That's not going to stop them from asking.
Right.
Because they have the right to ask. But you, as the elected body, have the right to say no.
If I may just interject, that the RFP gives general guidelines. The contractors bid on that, and then the next step, once the RFP is awarded, is the contract phase. That's where they sit down with staff and hammer out many of these details that you're bringing out. And then that contract comes to the council once we've hammered out all the details. If we do not get the items in the contract negotiations, then that falls apart, and then we go back out either to the second bidder if it's written that way, or we go back out with another RFP.
Yeah, and I also agree on the issue. Thank you. On the issue of green spaces, that's if we're clean green Boulder City, and then that needs to be a selling point for properties in Boulder City, and that it's not an afterthought, that it's something integrated into the design. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Adams?
Yeah, and just in going through this, it's funny because, of one of the things that is so important to people here in town is growth and development. I received no comments or anything from the community on this. The one thing that I've always have heard is it's not that people are afraid of any growth. It's just what type we're doing, where, when, and how. I look at like R115. Those are huge homes we're talking about, and I don't think we have any shortage of those available. However, then you're up against. We also are talking about around a golf course, and we don't want high density necessarily right around a golf course or anything. Just out of curiosity, what is the zoning by the municipal, like say down Mancha?
It's R17.
R17, okay.
Along Mancha, and then at the very south end between R110 and R115.
Okay.
What they call the new section.
Right, okay. So, I just am a little, it's not that I'm cautious about it, it's not that, nothing stands out to me in the RFP as being bad for what this is looking at. It's just in general, what is it that the community is looking to do? I will say regarding landscaping, as I often like to say, I'd like to encourage the use of native and desert adapted plant material. I just think that that's really important that we start moving in that direction. Obviously, I don't know that we need to absolutely make it a requirement or anything, but I think that would be important to put an emphasis on that's something that this council has been had a lot more concern and interest with. So
I know it's not included in the materials you have here, but when we do release the RFP, we actually also include the Southern Nevada plant species guide that's been put together by all the cities and the plant nurseries and the UNLV Cooperative Extension. And we even have hard copies here in the city that we provide people from time to time, but that's part of the packet when we do release RFP so that they know the plant materials that they should be using in their designs. Bless you.
Just a couple of things. One, this land had been voted for sale, I believe, in 2010, or was this the other sale or the other vote?
I think this was 2010, and then the recession hit, so nothing happened. And then,
well, actually, the recession hit. This went on. This became an issue because we were going to wither and blow away, as we always are going to wither and blow away.
then it kept dropping after that. Yeah.
But it was voted on. I'm just trying to get the point that this land has been voted on by the people of Boulder City already. It does look like we've got, about a 30% drop in value between the last RFP and this one?
It's primarily due to the requirement to dedicate 100 feet of land times however long bristlecone is back to the city that they're paying for, plus having to construct $1 million plus sewer line.
And what is the, do you know what the cost per acre for the Storybook homes is, the 349 tract?
Do you remember?
300,000.
Okay, so golf course land is selling for even less than this.
Well, they didn't have any exactions on the bristlecone side, whereas this one, they have to pay full freight for the 45 acres, then they have to give some of it back to the city outside the normal exactions such as public streets and so on.
Okay. And I do, I agree with the comments that have been made about the green space, but you've pointed out there is a golf course in front of the folks on the interior, and there would be that stretch. You said it was how wide?
100 feet wide.
100 feet wide. The length of bristlecone, I don't want to project too far in the future, but I believe that might be something that council could address in the subdivision plan as far as how the developer might treat that area, even though they will be passing it back to Boulder City once they're completed. Is that a possibility?
That is.
So it is possible we could make a requirement to create, some areas of desert landscaping, some areas of green space. I mean, it is over a storm drain, and, a park might still be appropriate or something like that.
To some degree.
Okay. All right, that's all I have. Well, one other thing. I agree, too, that the length of bristlecone and the amount of housing, I don't know that warrants a median in down bristlecone. And roundabouts, yeah, they just don't seem to sell well. Thank you.
I'm odd that way. I love to drive the roundabouts in the valley.
Yeah, we can go watch European Vacation and...
I like the roundabouts. I think they're a good idea.
Unlike Chevy Chase, I don't get stuck in the roundabout.
Can't get to the left. I can't.
You don't have anything against Europeans, do you?
Not me. I actually like the roundabouts too. I think they're quicker. It's just that nobody knows how to do them, and
that's
you
true.
Just become a target. All right, thank you.
Actually, I need you to tell me to go forth and sell land.
We will do that.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mayor, will there be public comment?
Sure, we can open this up to public comment. I'm guessing you would like to speak.
Good guess. Thank you very much. I want to speak simply as a resident, not by any official capacity, but
we do need your name, Judge.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Victor Miller. I live on the Los Vecinos development down at the end of Bristlecone. For history, I will note that although this was voted on by the people, it was actually voted on by the people 3 times before it actually got passed because of the recession. But at any rate, we have anticipated that Bristlecone Road would have that median in it from all the way down. We don't want there to be, we want the slowing factor that the median provides and also the aesthetic value of it. And we've anticipated that was in the master plan before even the golf course was there, that Bristlecone would be a road that would match Adams, Buchanan, Veterans as far as with the median. So I would certainly request that you be open to that idea of
keeping it the way it was originally designed, and how when we built our properties that's what we anticipated it would be. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Is it only on this topic?
Yes, at this time. We will have a final public comment period coming up. All right, we'll go ahead and close this, and we'll need a motion. Go ahead and take a stab at it.
Well, I wasn't gonna do a motion just yet, so.
Okay. Do you have other comments, or?
No, I was just going to, in relation to what was said at public comment regarding the median, I think medians, when we are talking about lane safety and we're talking about, what do they call it? I think road diet, traffic calming. I was going through a lot of that regarding other issues here that we're about to talk about. But I'm not opposed to it. I don't think it's a bad idea. I don't see how it necessarily hurts the plan of having that, and certainly it does add benefits to the area.
Anyone else?
The turn lane coming into Bristol Cone is not aligned with the road, and I don't know whose responsibility that is, but the alignment of Bristol Cone Road and the turn lane coming from the east probably needs to be addressed before we try to add a bunch more homes on that property. And the greenscape, that one last thing about that is that heaven forbid the golf course goes away, it still provides some green space.
If I'm correct, it did mention in there that we would maintain, if something did happen to that golf course, that we would maintain a certain area of green space. Is that correct, that was in there?
Right, that's in the development standards. They're one of the last paragraphs, that a 100-foot wide strip would be in perpetuity.
Gotcha.
Of open space.
I have a question in terms of a motion. Are we looking to suggest going forward to sell, but that elements of structure such as green space, median strips, alignment, those are items that could be hashed out after, or is it something that needs to be determined first before we would go forward with that?
So that they know what they're bidding on, they probably need to know about the median. As far as road alignments and things like that, that's always handled at the development stage when they go through engineering, do their traffic studies and so on, and where the green space is located in the subdivision would be handled at that phase. But so that they know what they're bidding on, they have to add up all their costs and try to see if they can make a pencil. They would need to know if they need to build the median.
Go ahead.
Make a motion.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to update the proposals with the suggestions made tonight of updating the evaluation sheet, of taking out the roundabout and median option, and suggesting a green space in the development.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Are you very concerned about having the median there? Is that a sticking point for you?
If I may just interrupt, I just want to remind the council, because this has to do with the land sale, that it does take 4 votes to move this forward.
Well, not the RFP.
Excuse me. I stand correct.
Yeah.
So you're suggesting without the median?
Without the median, most of the medians that we have in our current streets are all 4-lane, Adams, Buchanan, Parkway. Those medians all have 4 lanes. And this is a pretty narrow street to begin with. And I think it already has its own street calming in its narrowness.
Okay. If there's no other discussion then, all in favor of the amended motion as proposed by Councilwoman Folda?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
I believe Councilman R.A. was that an aye?
Yes.
All right, so the vote is 4-1 then. Okay, we'll move to item number 14 then, Boulder City Parkway landscaping. Mr. Luttrell.
Landscaping alternatives. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Keegan Luttrell, Public Works Director. Due to recent comments at our CIP workshops, we wanted to bring this forward to talk about landscaping alternatives on the BC Parkway. First off, I want to apologize. I know I stated during our briefings that we would get you alternative pictures of trees. Our landscape architect, Carrie Baird, that'll join me in a minute, thought it was going to be a great idea to actually make sure that the trees are available before he recommended them. So I did put copies in your email earlier this evening, but they'll also be shown on Mr. Baird's presentation. I wanted to briefly mention some of the concerns that we spoke about before. If we do make any changes at this point, since we all know that construction is underway, if we do change out the types of trees that we're going to be using, most likely there's going to be irrigation redesign. We all know every tree takes different amount of water, different locations, so and then also there's a potential of having to take it back to NDOT and for their review process, since it is their highway. And then another thing I wanted to mention, because there was questions before about why don't we have trees or larger bushes on the sides of the roads between the back of the curb and the sidewalk. That was actually looked at originally. We know that there's utilities all over the place on the sides of the roads, and it wouldn't have been cost effective to move all those utilities and just to be able to plant the trees on the side of the road. With that, I have a number of people here to speak or answer any questions that you guys might have, since this project's been going on longer than my tenure with the city. Mr. Kerry Baird with Stantec, he's our landscape architect. Jed Wheeler with ACC, our contractor. Jim Caviola from the CA Group, they were the designers on the project. And then also Jim Keene, our city engineer. With that, Mr. Baird, oh, he's already behind me.
Very good. I think we have a slideshow, correct?
Yes.
Is there magic to using this?
Press that button right there.
Okay. Very good. My name is Kerry Baird. I'm a landscape architect, resident in Las Vegas for 30 years. So I do know the Boulder City very well. I was retained on this project to help beautify the project, the streetscape project that you all are familiar with. And I'm going to show you a little bit about it. The context of the project sort of stemmed from the original idea of the beautification of the historic district of downtown. And several years ago, Boulder City took it upon themselves to look at, to express and to enhance the image of Boulder City through the use of landscaping. And what it was able to accomplish is creating a consistent use of plant materials from one end to the other, where it creates a symbol of the city's strength as a historic district. So using that context for the beautification and the streetscape project that we're now embarking on the Parkway, I'm going to show you 3 slides here that'll show you the before and after. Here you can see an example of what this current street looks like, west end, east of Gingerwood, looking east. And the after represents what we look to accomplish that's currently under construction now. And my emphasis is showing an example of a median where we're using palm trees and shrubbery, all desert, drought tolerant. This is another image, again, the east end. This is just west of Juniper Way, looking towards the west. On the left side is the image of what it currently looks like you have now. On the right side is the image, photo simulation, what we propose to accomplish with the use of plant materials, specifically in the median that was just said.
We originally looked at the shoulders, but because of the infrastructure that's currently in place now, we just don't have enough depth to support a root system for it. So we're able to use plant materials, everything kept 2 feet or less so that it doesn't block any sight lines that drivers would have coming in and out of the driveways. And then the third image I want to show you is the east end of Juniper Way looking east. This is looking back towards the historic downtown area. And what you see here in the distance example, one of the medians, and through the whole ecology of the design process and all the concerns about ingress egress through properties, the amount of medians that we originally had has been reduced to a few now, but they're very strategically located to be very effective and still will create an enhancement. So with these 3 images, what we wanted to do was to convey the plant materials that currently exist in the historic area and to carry that out into the parkway. Because this is what the public really sees when they come in and out and through Boulder City, whether they're going into Arizona or vice versa. This is a very busy street that people travel on. So the city's foresight to look at beautification of this area to mimic what the historic district has creates a consistent continuance to try to tie the whole area together as one. So what I'm going to show you here, I got 2 images and they're of the same view. One is showing what the median looks like that I showed you in the first slide with the palm trees, and what we were looking at is basically what's there now, which is the use of date palms and Canary Island palms. So on the left is the use of palms, and on the right is if we didn't use palms, I'm proposing the use of other trees that would be drought tolerant for our area. But it would also create context in terms of seasonal variation for flowering and color change. This image is the other median. This is one of the longer medians. And this, on the image on the left, you can see the use of the palm trees, which mimics the historic area. And the image on the right shows you what it would look like if we just used regular trees. Now, the other thing I want to share with you too is the use of trees is not in the natural context of what you see in a park. The medians are somewhat restrictive, and I do a lot of transportation projects, so I'm very sensitive when it comes to several issues: maintenance, trees growing into the street, that creates a safety issue. And so what we have chosen are trees that will stay within the context of the median, so that the biggest concern is always maintenance costs. You know, it's one thing to throw money at a project, but everyone knows coming up with the money to maintain it is always a hard thing to accomplish. So one of my major objectives is to make sure that the plants we choose really don't have any detriment to the ongoing maintenance that the staff has now with their streets. And then this third view is the same thing, same scenario where this is a before and after with palms and one without palms. So the next set of slides I'm going to show you are some ideas that I've been researching. And as what was said, I didn't want to show you anything early because I'll tell you this. I do a lot of landscape projects, and you know, as you all know, the economy's been doing very well since 2007 and 9. And what's happened is, and this is across the entire West and actually across the whole U.S., is everyone's busy again. And so because of that, nurseries, when the economy hit, they cut way back on inventory because it was just too expensive to keep things going. So when they cut back inventory, then the market picked up again. Well, then the inventory is not there. And it's been a constant struggle for nurseries just to keep plant materials in stock, especially when it comes to trees. So with the help of our contractor friends, we did some research and we contacted a lot of sources around Arizona and California to see if we can find the plant materials for this project. So this is one example. This is a tree. It's called a hot bush tree. It has a purple color. Really turns purple in the fall. It doesn't flower. It's an evergreen, so maintenance would love that. It's a drought tolerant tree, low water use. And it's a medium tree in terms of size. I was able to find some 36-inch box sizes that nurseries have. So you can see the image on the left. That's what we would buy if we were to plant it today. And the image on the right would look like probably 15, 20 years from now when it matures. And that's what I'm going to be showing you is the mature size. So the key I want to keep in mind is the trees are small than your conventional tree, But one of the things we want to keep in mind too is that the trees we choose will allow cars who are traveling the roads to be able to see through them and see the businesses. We don't want to create any visual obstructions more than we have to. This is another tree that we're looking at. It's a mastic tree. It's another evergreen tree, so maintenance would love that. Very slow growing. So what you see on the left is a 48-inch box size that we were able to find, and gives you a sense of how big the tree is when we buy it, or if we bought it. And on the right is a tree in its mature state, and we found that in Tucson, Arizona. This is another tree. It's a very popular desert tree. This one would provide flowering in the spring through summer. We can get shades of anywhere from pink to purple. It's a deciduous tree, but this variety of tree is called a desert willow. And what we're trying to accomplish with this tree is trying to create seasonal variation. Also, the variety that we're looking at using is selecting a variety that creates a low litter. So basically all we would be concerned with is flowering and leaf drop, no seed pod drops. And then this tree is called a vitex tree. It's a tree I'm sure you all have seen around the valley and here in town. Very slow growing tree. It ultimately will get to be about maybe 20 feet tall, maybe about 20 feet wide, but that's about 35 years down the road. In the meantime, you can see what it looks like for size if you bought it in a 36-inch box. So it's only 6 to 7 feet tall. So the beauty of these slow-growing trees is it allows, number one, when you plant fast-growing trees that grow like weeds, creates a lot of maintenance issues with, high winds, the branches will break, root systems will pull it out of the ground. So having a slow-growing tree allows maintenance to slowly work on it and to ensure it achieves the ultimate shape we want. And it's just the plant that they don't have to go out there every week and worry about. And it's also a drought-tolerant tree. The vitex does bloom late spring and early summer. Beautiful profusion of purple flowers. And so we were able to find 36-inch boxes. Oops. So those are 4 tree types I was able to find. Las Vegas and even Boulder City, it's a very tough market to find trees and plants that grow here. We've all experienced that. We live in a very harsh climate, and so that combined, you're putting it into a streetscape, which is surrounded by asphalt, which you're getting heat island effect and 120 to 180 degree temperatures radiating off that asphalt parking lot, combined by winds in the summer. You don't want to be out there in the middle of that median exposing that, and that's what these plants experience. So through careful research, we're trying to find plants we think are tough and durable, will hold up over time. Even the palm trees that we showed you do very well. Yes, they are water consuming, but the irrigation systems that we employ these days are very water efficient, and we've designed deep root systems so that none of the water is, when it irrigates, it doesn't go onto the surface. It's all underground, so it irrigates from the ground, underground down. So we're very conscientious in terms of that. So those are what we're thinking about for plants. Do you have any questions?
Well, thank you. My experience goes back a little further, and the landscape plan has changed from the last one I had seen, which again goes back a couple of years ago, that the trees along the sidewalks have been removed. It does look like there is more low-level plants being used than the initial plans I had seen. I think all the examples that you showed there would be, in my view, preferable. But since I've been making my comments known from the beginning, I'll let any others make their comments now. Thank you.
Okay, I do have some comments, questions. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Yes. I appreciate that. In terms of cost, when you're comparing the cost of one of those palm trees that have been chosen for the design versus the ones you were showing us, what is the cost differential per tree, or just looking at apples, so to speak?
Probably purchasing a date palm, for instance, is going to run you around $3,500 to $5,000, depending on the size. Planting a 48-inch box is going to probably run you around $2,500 installed. So there is a significant cost savings in.
So it's a savings over the date palm?
Yes.
Oh, okay. And in terms of hardiness, these are as hardy as these. I know that the palms are, you know,
they're pretty durable. Well, I can't speak for the trees, but I'll assume that, yes.
That's okay.
I mean, our intent was, you know, we're selecting plant materials that are durable for our climate and the conditions that they'll be planted in.
Okay. I know that we have a chased tree. My only concern about those is they do drop those little purple. I mean, I think any plant material is going to create some kind of debris, but
Nice thing about them, they only flower for about 3 weeks, so it's a very short window they do.
Yeah, they're blooming again right now.
Yes. Crazy weather.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, where to start? Just in generally speaking, you know, obviously this is, you know, when we talk landscape design, it's kind of a holistic thing. You know, you've picked, you know, things that also go well with the palm. You know, you had palms as kind of the center, and then everything else is kind of decided based around that. Would these be one-for-one swaps if we were talking about, say, getting the Vitex tree in there, the chased, whichever one that was? Would that just be a one-for-one swap, or we're putting that in instead, or?
No, the idea with the palm trees was two things. Number one is it, you know, being that the trunks are typically only about 18 inches, sightline, like I said, it was a criteria in the design of all this, and it was something a lot of the business expressed concern about early in the project, that we didn't want to see their signs blocked. And that's the beauty of the palm trees. You're getting all of that green stuff way up in the air, so it doesn't obstruct the signs that are important for the businesses to see. And so if I was to look at it from a business perspective, palms would be my preference just from those reasons. Plus, we're able to group them differently. To answer your question specifically, we were able to do groupings with the palm trees, and I like to do groupings because I like doing things naturally in rhythm, whereas the trees have a different canopy, so the spacings would be quite more with trees than they would with palm trees. So the density is going to be, the quantity of plant materials will be less than if I had palm trees.
How much do you think, if you were to redesign all that, how long do you think that takes some?
How many weekends do I have to work?
I know this is very hard because we've already broken ground on this project, so I'm just trying to ask some questions. I guess, you know, as a designer, obviously there's a continuity issue. If we were to completely go sans palm trees and then we do something else and then we go right into palm trees, as a designer, how important do you think that consistency or that continuation is?
To me, it's kind of important because, you know, the whole idea of the project was, you know, take the success in terms of the beautification that the historic district was able to accomplish. We're wanting to push that out all the way out to, you know, Veterans Boulevard. And to do that, you know, you need consistency in the plant materials because those are the forms that people recognize and associate with when they come in through a community. So that to me is important, is consistency. Another thing is I've had a lot of people over the years tell me that since the beautification of the historic district, that is one comment I hear about, is they comment about the palm trees, that they like, you know, because it's, you know, they're coming from other parts of the country and they don't grow palm trees in other parts of the country, and it's a form that's very unique that they can't associate with anywhere else. So typically I get a positive, you know, reaction to liking those kind of forms. Outside of that, you know, the maintenance with palm trees is typically like once a year because they do fruit. I mean, that's what they are, date trees. So, you know, when maintenance is having to go out and prune all the palms and on the district side, they would do the same thing on the Parkway side at the same time. So that's one reason why The use of the same type of species of palms makes it easier for consistency, continuance of whether you're in this historic district and all the beautification and the hardscape and sidewalk and street improvements that are going to be going on in the parkway itself ties it all together. And I think that's important because for many years, this outside area has been sort of segregated from, what the historic is. And here you're doing a great opportunity to tie all that together. And that's really important for identity purposes.
And I will just make the comment that I have heard the opposite from many people. I think maybe because they know I'm not a big fan of palm trees, so they turn to me knowing that I'm a safe ear in that regards. After looking at all this and comparing to what I had heard and beforehand, and the biggest thing to me that I was kind of surprised by was actually the lack of trees along the sidewalk. And I understand there's concern about potential issues with utilities. When I just looking, I got pictures sent to me of palm trees right over the water line on Boulder City Parkway there in front of the Elks. There's obviously landscaping and utilities have coexisted for a long time. Do you foresee that? Do you think could be any tree that doesn't has perhaps a non-invasive root system that you really don't think would pose a real problem to the utilities? I mean, it seems a little.
You're asking a landscape architect?
I am, because I'm hoping.
Because the answer I would tell you is not something the utility companies would tell you.
That's what I'm hoping to hear.
One of the issues is, we've got a high pressure gas line that runs along the street, and there's a easement that they specifically design with their high power gas lines that we're not allowed to encroach, even with shrubbery. So we were able to successfully convince them that the use of the low growing plants will not create any harm's way. Now, when it comes to trees, two problems you have to look at is the trees grow in size, they create weight. Trees do settle over time, and that's the biggest problem that utilities face, is even if their utilities are 3 to 5 feet down, that settlement creates compaction, and they've had problems in the past where they've had breaks in line. So it is a concern from that perspective. Small trees, I don't know if you would accomplish anything other than, like we were talking about earlier, the concern some of the businesses would have with some of these trees creating visual, obstructions in front of their properties. That would be the only concern I would say.
And I think my biggest concern is that, a big part of when I was reviewing the complete streets concept and ideas from the RTC is, a big part of it is making this street accessible, not just for cars, but also for pedestrians wanting to use it, for bicyclists and everything. And, when you just got an open, thing, no shade, no coverage at all, who's going to be walking that? We're no longer reducing the lane sizes, so there's not a little bit less of that control on the speed. So I feel like we've moved away a little bit from that friendliness aspect for pedestrians. For me, I would really like to see at least a little bit of something that could maybe give a little bit of respite from that sun from time to time. Not to mention, it's a corridor where cars are putting out emissions nonstop. Having more to absorb some of that is good for the environment. It's good for the community. Just looking at it, I looked at the pistache trees that are already in the median. They don't seem to be. We use them already throughout Boulder City. Would that be something that you think could exist along the walkway and not pose a problem to the utilities? I know I'm asking you and not Keegan here, but
I would probably lose the argument every time with the utility departments, because I have this conversation all the time. It's not just you, it's other cities. And I'm always at the losing end of the stick on that, and I have to work within those constraints.
I always hear that same complaint. Out of curiosity, do we have any codes or ordinances that specifically limit what can be planted on or around utility lines, a space or types, anything like that? And when we're talking trees growing in an urban setting in a walkway, we're not talking that this tree is going to flourish and mature in the same way a tree in a park is going to, correct?
Right.
So there's a lot more control over that, you would say. Not control, but it can only grow as big as the fish will only grow as big as the pond lets it, if you will.
Yeah, and it's also a function of, the trees are being put into very difficult growing situations. They don't want to be there in the first place. So you probably see all over the place that you'll see trees that don't seem to grow very much. They look stunted, and they sit that way for years. It's just those kind of harsh conditions that are very difficult is a reason why we've never been successful planting trees in those situations.
And then just my last question, I'll let the mayor go from there. Even if it was a losing argument for you, what if you were to suggest one plant material or tree that could be used at that sidewalk that you think would not be invasive, that would complement the medians, what's already there? What would you suggest?
Off the top of my head, I'd have to research it, because you have to look at each tree species in terms of how the root system develops. Most trees like to grow laterally, but there are trees that do like to grow down, so I would have to be careful in making sure a variety would have that kind of growth habit.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
I have some comments. There's a couple thoughts that I have. All of them are along the lines of what Councilman Adams has said, but since we're talking about just not the trees but the landscaping in general, I have some thoughts about, we have, I think, 4 crosswalks, and 3 of them go through an island, if you will, of plant material. Only one of them is on the edge of one of the planters that's in the median. So my concern and is having pedestrians kind of more blocked by plant material when they're in the middle of the street.
Correct. We would not want to put trees that create any visual sightline obstructions, because these are they got to be able to see towards the direction of travel, and we always designed a specific, Clark County publishes sightline criteria that we have to follow. Now, the typical rule of thumb is you can plant shrubbery in all these locations, but again, it's keeping things around 2 feet or less. And that reason also is to suit wheelchair access. So someone sitting in a wheelchair should not have to see a shrub or anything block their sight line to be able to safely cross the street. Trees, we want to make sure all the trunks are set back. Now, some trees, naturally, you'll see encroached in those spaces. The idea behind that is you want to encourage maintenance of those trees, to prune them up high so that cars and SUVs and whatever else can see at least 7 feet of clearance of underneath those trees. So a lot of times, just because of cost, we can't afford to plant huge trees. So what we'll do is we'll plant the trees small with the intent we're going to form those things in the proper direction they need to, so they don't create any sightline obstructions. And that would be one of those situations.
Okay, so I guess my concern is in the interim when they're, 4 or 5 feet tall and they're the size of a human being and people can't see that they're there. Because currently we have a crosswalk in the middle of the road with nothing obstructing it, and still no one seems to be able to see the person when they're there to slow down for them. So I would like to see a reduction in landscaping in those islands where there's crosswalks. I drive down Boulder Highway almost daily, similar to what they have on Boulder Highway. On the edge of their islands, they have an orange colored curb, and then they have brick on top of that where the pedestrians would cross across it. And so there's at least 10 feet line of sight for people who are walking across that crosswalk. Because I've had people, when I'm parked across from CVS, pop out of the middle of that it's not in a crosswalk, it's an island that they're using as a stop on their way across as they're jaywalking. And it's pretty scary to have someone jump in front of you like that. And I don't want to create that on this road where it's 4 lanes and the speed is a lot faster.
So is that comment in regards to trees specifically?
So, yes, if they're causing a line of sight issue, but also even low shrubs can cause that. Lantana itself, can get high.
Right.
And grow,
so like in our
likes
case,
to grow out.
If the plants don't at maturity never exceed 2 feet, do you see that as a concern to you?
I would just like to have a lot less landscaping near where there's crosswalks.
Okay.
Then we have some suggested plant material in our master plan. And the materials that are proposed for this landscape project, out of all the suggested materials in our master plan, only 2 of the plant materials that we're using on this project are in that list. One is the crepe myrtle, and in the master plan, that's a bush version. And the, can't read my handwriting, but it's the green Jim boxwood plant. We're the only 2 that's suggested materials in our master plan.
And that was intentional from my perspective. A lot of the original plants that are on that list don't belong here. And you can see it now. A lot of plants are missing in the downtown area that were once planted, and it's just because they sunburn, or they're just not drought tolerant. So the biggest thing I wanted to make sure is using plant materials, again, are for durability, for the maintenance, and are suitable for the climate conditions they're being planted in, which are very harsh. So I did not want to use any of those original plants for those reasons, because it's evident now. You see the holes and spaces where the plants once were, and that's for that reason. So I want to make sure we use things that work.
Okay. And then along the Nevada Way strip that has been redone, there are different trees that are used, mostly between New Mexico and Wyoming. There's a lot of variety of trees throughout that strip that are not palm trees.
Mm-hmm.
I can't name any of them.
Actually, one of them is a pistache.
Okay.
and we are using that tree.
Okay.
The only reason I'm using that tree is the medians on the west end of this project are large enough to where the maturity of a pistache will have the room to develop and won't have to be compromised in the space. So we were able to use that. The other tree that's used in the downtown area is the crepe myrtle. I'm not a fan of crepe myrtles. I've never had any luck with them.
Mm-hmm.
They tend to look ratty this time of year just because they're tired from the summer heat. You start seeing a little bit of leaf burn on them. And they're just really not conducive to our climate. Now in the spring, they look great. I mean, they're all fresh, ready to go, start the year off. You get a great flowering out of them, but towards the end of summer, you start to see the wear and tear of them. Now, I was going to use some in the medians on this job when I had the palm trees. The reason is those palm trees, the canopy of those palms, would provide some shade to allow those trees to be able to withstand those harsh conditions. But if I was to pull out those palm trees, then I would want to use something else besides a crepe myrtle.
Okay. Or a tree that would provide that shade that the palm was planning on doing. Okay. I know because our other streets that are landscaped, Veterans Memorial, Adams, around the library, those all have different assortment of trees that aren't palms. Same thing, they don't grow as tall. Is there certain things that you can do near utilities? Because all those trees are along the sidewalks. Like a root barrier or something that would allow trees to be along or near the sidewalk area.
Absolutely, and I do use root barriers all the time on streetscape jobs. Probably, and I can't speak for it, Public Works can probably speak to it, there may be no utilities directly underneath those trees. They may be off to the side. So what you just described is a perfect situation where you use a root barrier to keep those from encroaching onto those pipes. In our case, we've got water, sewer, gas, electric underneath these trees. So I don't have really any flexibility to do what you suggest. It'd be great if there could, but I haven't figured out a way to do it yet.
Okay. The last thing I wanted to say was that we do have in our codes, we do have a landscaping plan, and it does mention what's required in a C1 and C2 zone. And maybe this applies or maybe it doesn't, but I'll just read. When you're in a C1 or C2 zone, they will, if the site is to be developed with permanent landscape, except for the buildings and hardscape areas, they will provide a planter strip of 10 feet, minimum containing a minimum of 1 tree per 30 lineal feet, which may include the parkway, and it goes on, which shall be fully landscaped along the public street frontage. So I don't know if there's, if we can't have it on our side of the sidewalk, if we can have it on the sidewalk of the C2 zones, which do require a tree per 30 feet.
So what we're suggesting is having it on the private property?
Well, our code requires it, it looks like to me.
Right, with development, private development that occurs, that's where the landscaping provisions are, and that's where those requirements come from. So if there was a private development occurring, they would have to put that type of landscaping in on their development.
Okay, so why don't we see that along along this route right now?
Because we don't have provisions in the code that talk about landscaping requirements for parkways.
Okay. But we do but these are, okay. Well, maybe we can look into that more and discuss it.
If I may just ask a question for clarification, because this is a state highway, how does our ordinances, basically, advise NDOT or tell NDOT this is what our preference is for roads that they own and manage?
So you're asking what would be NDOT's requirements as it relates?
Well, or what, since the road is actually going through our jurisdiction, would our ordinances, be utilized in, requiring that of NDOT?
Well, just like with anything else that is related to NDOT, like with curb cut access, we have to get NDOT approval for that. So I don't know what NDOT's opinions would be on the type of landscaping that would be proposed on Boulder City Parkway as it relates to this. I assume they were consulted before regarding the proposed landscaping, and we can take any revisions back to them.
I suspect too that the reason there's not a lot of landscape out there is that those were existing businesses when that code went into effect. And we're also taking out some of the landscaping there because we're widening the roadway in some areas.
So what would be our requirement for replacing that and putting it back to code?
Good question. And again, we're not taking land because it was NDOT's land, but we're expanding that roadway. I think we would have to look at what we want to do with the code at that point.
Okay. So, so that was just mine. I'm concerned about the landscaping and having too much around the crosswalks. Looking at different plants, I do like the trees that you suggested for replacements for the palms. And, if possible, if we could do root barriers or something like that to bring in more landscaping along the sidewalks where pedestrians will be. They really do need shade in this climate.
I understand that business people prefer the palms because you can see their signs. I guess I am, for as much as I don't like the palm trees and have concerns about them, that they do create an environment where you can see across the street, but you still get shade. And by changing away, first of all, the palms now to some of these other trees, would that then therefore change all the other plant material that would be planted there because of shade, different shade requirements and so on?
That's a very good question. Yes and no. I'll have to look at that closely. There is a plant that we were using in conjunction with the palms. It's called sago palms, and those are in the existing district now. I'd have to look at those to see if they can handle the full sun, or if I have to move them to be around trees to give a little bit of shade to them. I'll have to look at those, and because we're making a modification to a microclimate, so to speak. So I have to make sure that whatever that I originally had there, it'll work with whatever we change it to.
Also, is there, I'm trying to figure out, is there a way that it could be, just like an art palette, blended, so you come into town and you don't have all the palms. It's not like you're going from the railroad pass to Veterans, and then all of a sudden you have to have palms. Is there a way to blend it from the time the plant material starts to Buchanan, so that you end up with some at the end, but have it so that it's not necessarily part of every median?
I think the context of what you're describing is great. We just don't have very many medians to work with, and the median that would be closest to the west is close to Juniper Way, to give you some context of distance. So right now I was planning, because of the size of the median, we're going to put 2 palm trees there now. That would go away. Now, maybe it makes sense, a clear break is you've got your entrance signage that says Historic District. Maybe that's the grand statement that takes you into the palm tree corridor, and then everything outside it is the tree corridor, The only reason I was pushing the palms is strictly from the point of view is the palms would at least, the only place we're putting really the plantings is in the medians. So an opportunity to create vertical scale to me is important, to create, to tie that long space, wide space, into a space that people can fit comfortable in a context of. That's where I thought the palm trees could come in and satisfy that. You're kind of creating an artificial roof, so you're kind of driving in this little visual, in this space that you're in. If you just had the trees, and again, the trees I'm proposing would have to be smaller, just so that it works with the dynamics of the streetscape, you lose that sort of context. So that would be the only thing, is it's a sense of scale, because you got a wide arterial, and the trees or the palms were going to help bring that down to a human scale and create some sort of, continuance.
Anyone else? So Keegan, I guess you're ready to go on this then, with all the clear direction we've provided?
However, Mayor, if I may interrupt, I do think if we still have the other contractors, I think it's important for the council to understand if there are any potential delays or retooling that needs to happen. There's actually some other potential dynamics that probably ought to be explained by the contractor that is currently going full force. Is he still here? I can't see the recording. Okay, because I want to make sure that the council understands it's not just about the landscaping, it's also about project scope, all those sorts of things. And although it may be a wash in terms of the landscaping costs, I would like to hear what potential financial impacts it may be, in terms of the general contractor as a whole.
Thank you. Appreciate that, City Manager. My name is Jed Wheeler with American Civil Constructors. I just want to quickly mention how great an opportunity it's been to work with the Boulder City team, CA Group. This is a different style of project where a contractor has been able to be in the design of it with the designer and the entity, and that makes for a better partnering. It reduces your potential claims and change orders and all that. So it's been a good process so far. We've worked since last August, I think, of 2018 together. So we have a good team. And thank you for letting me talk about this. It's one thing that we were thinking about. CA Group has done an amazing job with the design. They finished, I think it was in January, and it was submitted at the end of January. It took NDOT 5 months to review the design. So the concern is if we go back, Kerry has to redesign the irrigation system. He has to redesign, the shrubs, the plant, the trees. We could be looking at 3 to 5 months of a delay on the project, and we're a month and a half in. So, you know, it would probably only be one department, right, Jim and Adrian, that would be reviewing the landscaping, but we just don't know how long that entity will take to review, because they're going to have comments, and then it has to go back, and then they have to revise and start that whole process over. And just like every entity in town, everybody's busy, and so that's a big concern. Is just the time that it'll delay our project. And I also want to talk to your concern, Councilwoman Folda, about the safety of the pedestrians crossing the parkway. This has been reviewed by NDOT Traffic Safety. We are big in safety. Everybody, you know, we've had a good team together for the last year. We've been reviewing this. There are traffic signal arms that are above the parkway on both sides, so going east to west, or however you want to call it, north to south. And you know, it's a push button that they push, and then there's flashers to make the traffic stop. So it's not just, right now there's nothing there to let traffic know that pedestrians are crossing, but NDOT Traffic Safety had those put in for that specific reason, so it kind of helps the situation there. And then as far as costs, we don't know the impact of costs either, because we're not sure about the trees. So we have to get with our subcontractor that we've hired to do the landscaping. That's just time sensitive too, that we're concerned about. So whether it's a cost savings or an additional cost, I mean, RTC is funding this project. It's not Boulder City. So RTC would have to be involved in that. So that's just more potential delays on the project since we've started. So we're up for looking at anything. It's just, since we've already started and this has been going on for a couple of years, we're gung-ho. Businesses are very concerned. They want us to get out of there as quick as possible, and that's our goal. And so we just don't want to delay it any further and cause any impacts to the businesses. So I'll take any other questions if you have any.
Well, I appreciate that. And again, I have a little more experience or longer length of service here. Yes, these conversations should have been held 2 years ago, or at least a year ago. I'm not sure exactly what it is we're going to accomplish tonight or what we have accomplished tonight. I do see that there has been a scale back of the landscaping. I think the last set of plans I saw were somewhere around the 80% complete plans. And at that time, there were still trees, palm trees, on the sidewalks. Clearly, those have been removed now. I think there's going to be a lot less of an impact. I agree with the landscape architect that, you know, there is some benefit to having some scale there. At this point, you know, I'm very hesitant about saying, well, let's go and run around and ask a bunch of questions and continue to get nowhere with it. You know, this might be one of those cases where we just say, you know what, we'll see how it turns out 3 or 4 years from now. If we don't like it, we alter the plan. But I'm just not sure that whatever we do tonight is going to be cost effective, other than saying we'll finish up with this item and move on.
Yeah, I think Carrie did a wonderful job explaining I think probably at that 80% design stage, it hadn't gone to the utilities for their review.
So the utilities, the people who are going to tell you what you actually can and can't do.
Yeah. So I will confirm with Keegan and Jim and everybody else that there are a lot of utilities in the sidewalk, and it's scary. Even what we're doing right now is scary. Those gas lines are in the 50s. And we have to have Southwest Gas on standby almost every day to make sure that we're not doing anything. And so once we put trees in there, you're in for a world of hurt. Those roots are going to go everywhere. So it's, anyway.
So with that, anyone wishing to make direction, or do we just move on?
Right. I would like to direct us to continue as to go forward as we are, because my major concern, as he just brought up, would be the impact on the businesses. They're not happy with not having people being able to drive the way they want to drive in and out of there. I tried to get my car washed today, and I was not quite sure where I was supposed to turn. So I guess that would be my concept, that going forward for phases 2 and 3, that we get involved early on enough in the process so that it's not an issue, and we can start making some decisions early on in that.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? I do appreciate it. I think the information was very valuable. It will benefit us in the future. Again, I appreciate you looking at the types of plants or trees that might be acceptable, or at least will live out there. I just think we're too far into this project to start making changes at this point. But I do appreciate the work everyone did for this evening's presentation. Thank you.
So, Honorable Mayor and Council, if I may just also comment, I want to thank the contractors who are doing an awesome job out there. They're ahead of schedule, and for committing to come out tonight to further explain the process, the landscaping, and some of the pros and cons associated with that. And to the council, I will commit that staff on the next phases that we will seek your policy input as to what you would like to see on future expansions, whether it's phase 2 or phase 3 or any other street projects throughout the community, that we will try to bring forth a policy directive of sorts of, what we should be considering and how we should propose landscaping throughout the rest of the community.
Thank you.
So one other quick thing. I did have one bit of directive that I would like to see that doesn't involve NDOT or anybody like that. It's just that we make sure that if anything that the city is doing that is using renderings or images or videos, that they don't show those palm trees down the walkways, because that's what I've been seeing this whole time up until I got the plans last week. So I don't know when the last time we did that was, but it's something that I keep seeing on Facebook when people repost it. Look what's coming on. So, and anybody else out there, I just think that it would be important that we make sure people don't have improper expectations of what this really is.
Thank you. We'll go ahead then and move on to our last public comment period. Is there anyone wishing to speak in public comment? And this can be on any issue.
Yeah, I did try to speak earlier with regard to the old hangar, and you didn't allow any public comment then. That would have been more timely.
I believe, made it clear, though, that we're nowhere near making any decisions on this. We're going to be looking at it over the next couple of months. As a matter of fact, at this point, there's been no direction given to anyone on anything at this point.
Right, and that's the one thing I would have liked to comment on at the time. The fundamental problem that has happened with this RFI, and as some of you know, I'm Rob Martin. I was the kind of point person on the Bullock Field Coalition that put, frankly, a lot of work into what we were looking at, which was a much bigger impact. And I actually think the Litchens project may be the right answer for now. If people want to do something with Boulder City in the future, though, that really doesn't do much for Boulder City at all. For instance, I bought 4 Airstreams myself just to kind of try it out and see what I thought about it. And that's actually my idea to begin with. And that's, it doesn't really matter. But the other problem is that the way the proposal was done, the RFI, it doesn't really work. There's a 2-acre easement on it for some drainage. And the other problem is that will cut off the balance of the land down to the next road, so it really can't be used for anything. This really needed to be a more complete proposal to begin with, which is what 2 of us did propose, is trying to use the whole property, because otherwise it really doesn't work, and the city's actually wasting a huge bunch of land. And I did talk to Mr. Mays about it in the first place, like, given what you guys did, This doesn't work. If you're trying to do anything with this, it doesn't work. Here's what would work. Do you want me to go that way or not? And I was told yes, or I wouldn't have done it. And that's why I withdrew the proposal, because if we're really just talking about the RFI, I think the Litchens proposal absolutely makes sense, and nothing else does. But the city is essentially cutting off its nose despite its face. Take a look at the land that brackets around that, and by doing this, the city is essentially making it undevelopable to do anything with the remainder of that land. And that would be my only comment for staff to think about and for all of you to think about is, in the long run for the city, what makes sense? And unfortunately, the hangar as a proposed boat storage and some kind of little thing like that, for now is probably the right answer. But in the long run, it does not work, and it actually wastes 30, 40, 50 acres of land the city owns, which will make it essentially undevelopable. And that's too bad. So, short-sightedness versus long-sightedness is where we hope elected officials go. And with that, I'm done. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in public comment? Please state your name.
James Clutterbuck. I'm a homeowner in the cottages, and thank you very much for bringing up the cottages, because in these plans, the one thing that's kind of left out is there are 12 units whose patios overlook that landing strip. So anything that you do there, I've gone down the line and talked to several of the residents there about these proposals. When you walk outside, especially there was a gentleman I spoke to today who showed me his patio, and he said they want to put RVs like at the end of my patio. My patio overlooks the landing strip. These homes were not cheap. They were expensive, or average for the cost of homes here. It's going to affect our property values. If I don't like looking at an RV storage unit outside of my patio with boats and RVs sitting out there, if I go to sell my home, no one's going to buy this. I mean, this is a new, very levelly designed housing area, 60 units. I just want to say that all the projects on the surface seem very good, but I look at the picture of the hangar there with the event center, and what you don't see is right across the road is somebody's home. And if there's concerts there and stuff like that, cars pulling in and out, parking lots, homes, all of that, I don't know. You guys are in a really tough situation here, between a rock and a hard place. I wouldn't want to be there to have to decide what it is or who it is that's going to get the shaft. But I hope that you take into consideration that people are actually, they've bought these homes, and these patios actually overlook that landing strip, and whatever you stick there, they're going to have to look at every single day. So that's all I have to say, and thank you very much for the appearance of being concerned. It's very important to my wife and the other residents at the cottages. So thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Joyce Stroud, and I also live in the cottages. I just moved here 4 months ago from Northern California. Sold my home there, came here, invested everything I have into this house. And I don't think it's going to be worth much if you put an event center there with loud music or anything like that. And so I just wanted you to know that I'm faced with disaster if that happens. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm Terry Moss, and I don't live in the cottages, but my house also backs up to the runway. And I would just speak to a couple of comments that I heard earlier this evening. One of them being that somebody would like to build a neighborhood for me. I have a great neighborhood. I don't need someone to develop a more neighborhood for me than I have there already. And I also still can walk directly down to the barbecue joint. It's a straight shot down the runway, less than a mile. And it's a nice walk. And I don't think it's a loss to not have land developed that overlooks a valley and the mountains and has a great starry sky at night. So just another point of view. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Blair Davenport, and I'm also part of the Historic Preservation Committee here in Boulder City. And I just wanted to follow up with City Manager Noiola's request of the City Council for future landscaping ideas and input and planning. I'd like to offer that the Historic Preservation can assist with that, especially when it comes to landscaping the Historic District. I believe there's a strategic plan goal for creating a historic preservation plan for the city. And part of that plan doesn't just address structures or buildings, but it can address landscapes, circulation, that type of thing. So I'd like to just address that. I've heard today folks talk about the historic district and the palm trees that go into the historic district. There should be no palm trees within the exact historic district boundary. That was not part of DeBoer's original plan. So just want to say palm trees in the historic district. And by the way, palm trees are not a tree, they're a grass. So.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Charlie Hantz. I'm also a member of the Historic Preservation Committee. I would just like to offer a little reminder here in terms of the hangar that one of the goals in the strategic plan, the 2025 strategic plan, and one of the goals of the Historic Preservation Committee is the evaluation of the hangar and the airport for inclusion in a expansion of the historic district. And I think we need to be aware of that if we're going to do any kind of development of that airport property, because it may impact the ability to list it as a historic property. Or if it is listed as a historic property, it may impact what can be done to that property without impacting its standing as a historic property. So I just want to sort of remind people that there is that out there, and we are now a CLG city, and there are some requirements that have to be met in terms of evaluating any historic property. So if that becomes a property that is listed on the historic register, then there are some considerations, I think, that need to be taken into account in terms of what might be done to that property. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Jill Lakin, Boulder City Chamber. I'd like to also address a little bit more about the RFIs. After hearing the two current RFIs and as well as the one with Rob, Allen, and Mike that we heard at the Historic Preservation meeting, I am really grateful that they are all strong and impactful local businesses that have a passion for the success of this community and will be thoughtful to who and what Boulder City is and willing to work with the city on what the best use for this lease might be. I'm not sure if you get extra credit points, could be awarded to local businesses in this RFP, but or if that's discrimination, I don't know, but it would sure be nice to know that local businesses are somehow acknowledged in the fact that they do have an understanding of what has been successful here, and we can see that they have had, all three of those have had successful businesses here. Life is being given to this area, and adaptive reuse of this wonderful structure of a hangar will be a way to energize this gateway into Boulder City, and will add to the efforts of creating one long main street that the Complete Streets project adds as well. And so I also think that there might be some consideration that needs to be had by the city in developing this RFP in regards to the cost to the city for the infrastructure that has to go in prior to any potential use in the lease. Had a conversation with a very intelligent citizen that contributed some great information about there will be infrastructure costs, and so depending on what that lease looks like, maybe that's something that needs to be considered in developing the RFP. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public comment period and move on quickly, I hope, to council reports. Mr. Adams?
I'll just say I had a great time at Art in the Park, and I'm looking forward to Country Store next weekend.
There you go. Councilwoman Folda?
Here, here.
Councilwoman Bridges?
No, nothing to report next week's Southern Nevada Water Authority Commission meeting, so I will report at the next meeting. Other than that, yes, it was wonderful to look down the lanes of Art in the Park and not even able to see the other end. Just wall-to-wall people, but nobody blocked my driveway, and that made me happy. Thank you.
And I also was up at Art in the Park. Looked like a great crowd. I had a Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority meeting this morning and received great reviews from about 4 of the people on that committee who were out for the event. So another successful event, I hope, for the Hospital Foundation. Mr. Hare, did you have any comments? Okay, we are adjourned then. Thank you all for coming.